Hello there, everyone. Welcome back to the Fanscription Podcast. What? We're all together?
We're together.
Yes. Spreading our diseases?
Yes.
No, we're all fully vaccinated. Just how it used to be. If you could cough a little closer to Malcolm, that'd be great. Oh, sweet. Cough across. Tastes like Rona.
No.
It's a sweet taste, isn't it? It's Diet Rona. Well, everyone, I just wanted to introduce, of course, Malcolm is here.
Hello.
Who voiced Harvey Dent, Two-Face, in this What If Batman Forever was directed by Tim Burton. So this was a big one. Of course, Rob was the main writer on this one. And this is
incredible. Rob
yeah,
Williams.
You did a lot of writing too.
I know, but I came up with the base, and then you expanded and added all the Riddler stuff.
Don't sell yourself short.
Oh well, thank you.
It was a great project.
Thanks.
It was a lot of fun.
This was a lot to put together. I figured, this was always about answering your guys' questions, because we saw so many questions in the YouTube comments of the video, and we have another fanscription coming up that I wanted to hold off on because we're waiting for something else to happen there, so stay tuned. So I wanted to take this month to answer your guys' questions about this one, because there are a lot. And we'll answer the question again, even though we already answered in the video, if we'll do a Batman and Robin one.
Yes, we will do that. That was the number one question.
Answer number one. There you go. We're definitely doing that still. So first, I want to talk about quickly our memories about Batman Forever, if we do have any. And then we'll talk about, it was a long process putting this together. So just a little bit of that, the work on it that me and you did, and that Malcolm voiced for us, and then we'll get into the questions. So really quick. Batman Forever, I'll go first. I think that was the first Batman movie I saw, because that was kind of when it was about 1995. So
Sweet child.
I know. I very quickly went back and saw the Michael Keaton ones. I was like, oh, these are way better. I remember being a kid and going to rent them from my local video store and being like, yeah, let's get to the old one. This is way better than the 95 one. Of course, I was watching Batman the Animated Series at that time, and the tone was completely different. I remember not being a big Jim Carrey guy even back then, so I was always kind of
you and Doug would not have been friends.
I figured in high school, I don't know, who would be friends when we were younger, but I was never a big Jim Carrey guy back then. Now I like his more serious movies, honestly.
I do too.
Yeah, than his comedic work, but that's kind of my memories of it. I didn't see it in theaters. I saw it, on home video, and then Batman and Robin I saw the same way on home video. But, I mean, in terms of Batman Forever, that's the one that was the first live-action Batman movie I saw. And that's kind of all that I have to say about it. I'm not a huge fan of it. I personally, a lot of people are saying, oh, I forgive it now because we've gotten good Batman movies since then. And I'm kind of I still think it's bad, personally. There's still good stuff in it. I do like stuff at Wayne Manor. It's completely shot differently and looks like a completely different movie a lot of the time. Chris O'Donnell, I know that splits a lot of people, but I feel like he brought something least. Yeah, he's okay, and his story was at least decent.
They tried to give Robin an origin story,
right? Which was not the worst thing in that movie. Everything else, though, I'm not a big fan of. Malcolm, what about you?
I honestly vaguely remember this film existing. I guess I somehow managed to avoid seeing it because I remember the Michael Keaton, the ones before that.
We all do.
Right.
Yeah, and this one just kind of escapes my memory. I do remember, what's his name, playing Two-Face, which was
Billy Dee Williams talking about, or are you talking about Tommy Lee Jones?
Yeah, Tommy Lee Jones. Yeah, I remember that. That was memed to shit.
Yeah.
Just the crazy zany Joker.
Such a strange performance.
Yeah, I wonder if it was just the directing.
It's
I'm sure it was.
Watching it, because I had to watch it again to do this. I will say this about Tommy Lee Jones: it is fascinating to watch him in scenes where he's not even doing anything, and he's still just there are moments where he's talking to Jim Carrey and he's kind of staring off in the distance. I don't know if he's eyeing the catering table or something. He's and I'm like, what is going on?
He's just a cartoon character the whole time. Any other thoughts about it, Malcolm?
Yeah, that's about it. That's the best memory I have of it is Tommy Lee Jones acting as the Joker as Two-Face.
There you go. Rob, I'm assuming you saw us in theaters.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on it now?
I was Well, now or then?
Well, both, I guess.
I, at the time, was pretty underwhelmed. Doug and I got into arguments over it because he thought it was better than Batman Returns.
Oh, no,
At
really?
the time, yeah. And Doug had what I can only describe as a Jim Carrey fetish. It was disturbing. We all slowly backed away from him when he would talk about Jim Carrey. But so I think that carried it for him because he was such a Jim Carrey fan. But yeah, I remember the opening credits, and I remember the giant text and the different score by Elliot Goldenthal, and I almost remember just instantly going, this is different,
right.
and I'm not sure I like it. And then cut straight to the, I'll get drive-through line, and I'm like, no. I did, at the weird thing that's changed is, at the time, I actually liked Val Kilmer.
I did too when I first saw it.
I thought he was a really good Bruce Wayne. I thought his Batman sucked, but I thought he was a really good Bruce Wayne.
Oh, this was that one.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Welcome back. Welcome back, Malcolm.
Whoa, man! I saw a few clips of that, and I was like, I can't.
So watching it for this, I was kind of surprised. I'm like, yeah, maybe it was the Stockholm of just I didn't like everybody so much in this movie that I just thought Val Kilmer was the best thing. And therefore I said I kind of liked it, but I'm like, yeah, I'm not even sure I like his Wayne that much, seeing it nowadays.
Me and my brother would constantly repeat the line where he's in Chase Meridian's office, and he's like, tell me, doctor, do you like the circus?
Bats are not rodents, no, doctor.
Which one had George Clooney?
That's
Batman and Robin.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that's the
Would
next
you like
one.
to start over?
No, it's fine. It's fine. Like, I'm like...
But yeah, no, the one thing I did like, and I still really love it watching it again, is I love Jim Carrey's Nigma when he gets
after
all of his tech together and is basically challenging Bruce Wayne
Right.
and imitating Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
And I wish they had gone with that performance the whole way through, where from the very beginning it wasn't just, he idolizes Bruce Wayne, but he's carbon copying him.
Right.
And that scene where he's like, Bruce Wayne does things like, Bruce takes off his glasses, and so Jim Carrey will be like,
Right.
like he folds his arm, and Jim Carrey's like that whole scene at that party is amazing. And even his reaction when Two-Face busts in, and he's like, you're ruining my big party. Are you insane? Like,
Right.
I love all those bits. I'm like, I wish Jim Carrey or Schumacher, somebody had just said, yes, that's your Nigma. Do that the whole way through.
That would have been nice. How's my mole?
How's my mole? My favorite is when he tells what's her face to shut up.
Yeah.
Like that
Drew
whole scene,
Barrymore.
Drew Barrymore is the Two-Face's like
Good side.
yeah, like
Something. Yeah.
that stuff was all great. But yeah, Two-Face I thought was terrible.
Right. There was potential
yeah.
in there. I mean, we all can admit at least that there was good stuff about it that they just didn't focus on. They wanted to.
Well,
make
he had no origin story. They I remember I was very just annoyed the first time I saw it because I was like, 95. I was 16, and I just remember thinking like the one news clip of him getting splashed in the face where they do the "as we all know,"
Right,
and I'm
I know. We skipped over that.
I was like, where was this anywhere in Batman Returns or
Right.
even in this movie?
They
Like,
never did his full origin as Two-Face.
Yeah.
They just showed him on TV getting splashed with acid.
That was it?
as a news
Yeah.
clip, yeah.
It's like just a man that got acid on his face.
Right.
So
You
when we
know.
did this, like I think the goal was we had him set up in Batman Returns how he gets to this point, so we don't need to do that all over again in this movie.
Right.
But yeah, so I don't know. I was underwhelmed. Doug now agrees that Batman Returns is a superior movie, and like it's Batman Forever. There are parts of it's a guilty pleasure. I will say this: it is probably the most 90s thing ever made, and I kind of respect it as being a 90s time capsule.
get
This
that.
and
Yeah.
Space Jam.
See, I was about to
fair.
say that is Space
Yeah.
If
Jam,
you
yeah.
put these two movies together, you would have the ultimate 90s movie. Because I'm looking at all the colors, the Nickelodeon green and oranges and neons and Jim Carrey. And I'm just like, yeah, this is
Especially
like
Jim Carrey.
so... I'm like, this just... Whenever I watch it, it transports me back to 1995. So I get why some kids, like, who are that age have a nostalgic connection to it.
Yeah.
I kind of like it a little for that, too.
Sure. There's definitely, like we said, there's stuff to like. There's nostalgic attachments to it, and it's Batman. So if you grew up with it, you'll have some kind of, something to
for
like
sure.
about it, I guess.
It's Batman. And then, Six Flags spawned the ride,
Oh, that was for.
That was for Batman
That was-
Returns.
was it Batman Returns or was it the
1992, Batman the Ride came out at Six Flags Great America.
Right. That's
'Cause
what
I wrote
there's
it.
a lot of Six Flags. Right.
I remember that.
There's a lot of Six Flags out there. We're talking about the Great America ride in Gurnee.
Yeah,
Gurnee.
Is that where
Yeah.
it's at? I haven't been there in a while. I want to go back. But okay. Really quickly, I want to go into some of the background on how we made this. So, like, we were supposed to do this a long time ago, last year.
Yeah, because we did the Batman Returns one.
Right. So this was like on the list when I first started writing down stuff that I want to do personally for Fanscription. This was what if Tim Burton directed Batman Forever? What if the Michael Keaton Batman continued on to a third
And
movie?
it was super requested, too.
Right. That was like a lot of you
our
guys
number
were
one
talking
request.
about that. Yeah. So I knew that I wanted to do it, and you wanted to do it too, but we didn't want to like compromise on it. We wanted to make it like a really special episode. So I wrote a whole script for it last year, and I remember sending to you. I was like, I don't think this is very good. I was like, I like some of it, but it's also a sequel to your Batman Returns episode. So I was like, I felt kind of weird like doing a sequel to your episode.
It wasn't, honestly, like when I read it, I didn't think it was that bad at all because it reminded me of what the animated series did with Two-Face.
Right, yeah, that's
so
what I
you
was
were
looking
taking
for.
it seriously as a drama and you have Grace in it. And my only criticism of it at the time was just simply, it's very light. Like,
Yeah.
I felt like, man, this would be an hour-and-a-half movie
Right.
tops. And even then, you'd have to kind of find a way to pad it out.
Right, there wasn't enough happening.
So there was no Riddler.
That because the thing was, I figured this out later because I always wanted to do just a Two-Face, like Billy D. Williams Two-Face movie, where like he deserves his own movie after.
Oh, yeah.
Right. But after your Batman Returns episode, and we're making a sequel to that, half of the movie was kind of cut out because of like how I was imagining it, like subconsciously was like
You would have had an origin.
I would have had like the Two-Face turn in the first act, and then the rest of the movie, so
Yeah.
everything would have filled
Yeah.
up. So that's why it didn't really work. And I was trying to avoid Riddler because I just wanted Two-Face to get that shine, you know. But the way you brought in Riddler, and as we have him played by Robin Williams,
Rob.
Rob Williams. That all worked out really well. I remember like the first draft you sent was long, but I was thinking.
Well, I
like,
sent it to you. Like, and this is the funny thing because I all the way till near the end when you're like, no, we're just doing it. I said like I sent like every dialogue scene I could think of,
Right.
and then was pretty much like, yeah, just pick and choose whatever you want, and like you can just form your own plot from this. And then somebody like, do the whole thing, and I was like, shit, I wasn't counting on that. Well, I was just gonna give you anything to just let you throw shit on the wall
Yeah.
and see what sticks.
I remember last year you sent me like a punched up version of it. That was like I think like just as long, but like it wasn't as refined as what you eventually had it. But then that's when we decided let's just do it for Batman. Like we could really charge it up, and like that'll be like the culmination of 2021's Batman. So I think you started writing again like I don't know when was
April.
it? April, yeah. So we got that all done, and that's when you sent it to me like I'm not cutting this down at all. Like we're gonna do this whole thing.
I sent it to her. I was like, dude, just cut wherever you want. And you're like, I'm not doing it. And then we did the read through, and it was like an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, dude, you could do a 2-parter out of this. And you're like,
Right.
you can cut. I'm telling you, you
I
won't
know.
offend my ego. Cut it.
We could have done a 2-parter very easily.
When I saw that script, I was like, this isn't a full-on. It's a script.
Right.
The script is a script.
Pretty much.
It's an actual script.
Yeah, I can't remember. It was like 40-something pages, but it's not
Yeah.
like official script format.
It was
Yeah.
about 40. I think it was somewhere around the lower 40s.
Yeah,
It's still in like a treatment form.
yeah,
Yeah,
right.
it was not a full script
Yeah,
format.
they're still like glossing over a couple scenes with narration, which is what
Yeah.
we always do on Fanscription.
Oh, yeah,
but
yeah.
I mean, this is way more dialogue heavy, obviously. Than
Yeah,
we've
it
ever
was
done
much.
before.
It was the closest we've come to like a full script.
Right. Yeah, and that's why I was thinking, like this is our most requested video. People have been asking it for so long, and it's Batman everything, and like trying to lead up to that as our big, ender for that month. Even though it came out on June 1st because we had to wait an extra day. But yeah, I really wanted to do that because we never tried it before to make this big long episode, and we could have split it in 2 parts easily. But I wanted to try and
It would have made my life easier. And
Right. I wanted to see how it was going to do if you guys were going to be receptive to watching an hour and 40-minute video. And the reception has been great.
190,000 of you were apparently.
Yeah, as of the recording of this. So you guys like really surprised me with how well you received it because I always liked it. Rob always liked it. But I was always like, this is very long. I know it's kind of an experiment to see if people are going to
Yeah, this is definitely one of
watch
those where I'm like, okay, this is just like pretentious sounding, but like this is for the art,
Right.
Because I'm like, I was adamant, like in my head, I'm like, yeah, this is gonna get like 50K and nobody's gonna watch it or care. So.
Right. I mean, people checked it out, so I can't thank you
No,
guys
the
enough
comments,
for-
I like even not just the 190K, but like the 2,100 comments. Like, it was very talked about, and that made me happy when people were talking about it. It's like, oh yeah, cool idea, and people contribute their own ideas.
Right.
And
That's
so,
what I always love about the fanscription videos. Then we ask, what would you do? And then we could read these really creative comments about, like, oh, I never even would have thought of this way.
a couple people had own scripts of their own. It was like 12 paragraphs and stuff. I'm like, wow, you really thought about it.
Right. But yeah, that's why I think this one connected, was because everyone has an idea for a Michael Keaton Batman Forever, you know?
Yeah, that's what people were wanting.
Right. And so much so that they are doing
Including
that comic
Keaton,
book.
apparently.
Right. Yeah, right.
Really?
Keaton's going to be in the Flash movie as Old Man Bruce Wayne.
So Keaton said, and this was
That
like...
was a rumor.
No, he's really in there.
Wow.
No, and Keaton said, and this was like what I basically was trying to do when I wrote the script, was he said when he saw the Nolan films, and Dark Knight in particular, that's what he wanted, kind of in style. He's like, I wanted the escalation, I wanted the darkness, and when they start switching things up with the third film, and he saw the new script, he's just like, I'm out.
Right.
But he wanted something darker. He would have come back if he thought the script was good and Burton was directing it.
Right. I remember him saying like he wanted to have some flashbacks about where Batman came from and kind of Bruce Wayne's journey, and that's what they did with Batman Begins. So I know that he liked it for that reason. But yeah, I mean, everyone has an idea about what this could have been, and they're making that comic book, Batman '89, that's going to continue the story and you know, bring.
I can't wait to read that.
Yeah, I'm so excited for that. I follow the artist on Twitter, and he puts all these teases out.
I was laughing because some of the images came out so late, and I'm like, man, I would have just used these in ours.
Right,
like,
I know.
They had a good Billy D. Williams, like, and I had to like do them kind of myself.
Right. Let's talk about that really quick. So you see the thumbnail behind us there. That was just one of the 670 something images that Rob made for this episode. 673 photoshopped images he made. Unbelievable.
Yeah, they were good. They got that point across.
For real. We were messaging each other.
They were
back
fast. There was definitely quantity over quality, but yeah, they were. I think it was 3 weeks of just pulling basically 16-hour work days.
Yeah.
Like I would get up, like I would start work at like 10 in the morning and then go to bed most nights like probably around 2, 3 a.m.
Yeah.
And then just break only for, breakfast, lunch, dinner.
That's exactly what I was doing. So as I was editing, Rob was making these pictures. So we'd be messaging each other on Facebook at like 2 o'clock.
There was a competition too going on because I wanted to get them all done before he got ahead of me.
Right.
So I was like just going really fast. I was like, I just got to make sure that like he'll have the material to work with.
Right. So it was intense. I mean, like we were just like we were telling each other to go to bed. Like
I know. We're like Facebook messaging at like 2 in the morning. I'm just like finally like, all right, I'm going to bed. You should too.
Right. Yeah. It was like it built a lot of camaraderie, I think, with the fanscription group that we got to do this. And just like the work hours we put into it. I think originally we had it the week before, and then I pushed it a week back because we had a couple issues that came up that we wanted to make it as perfect as possible.
Yeah.
So we're like, let's just hold off a little bit longer. And anything that you couldn't do with Photoshop, we had our artist Anna fill in, when she did a great job with some of those images.
Yeah, I was gonna ask like where those came from.
Yeah, Anna,
CGs.
she's a great artist. Anna V. You can look her up on Twitter and all that. I think Canoodle, artstation.com/Canoodle.
Included in the YouTube.
Yeah, there's all the description and all that stuff. But yeah, the editing process was like nothing I've ever gone through. It was just from the moment I woke up to the moment I went to sleep, I was editing this stuff.
Yeah, it's been years since I've thrown so much work into something.
Right.
I'm like, all right, pulling all-nighters.
Right.
And it was a big project.
To bring Malcolm into this, like, this was editing, basically like editing a film because you're going through all the separate takes, and these are dramatic readings by you and Heather and everyone.
And they're impressions, too, so I like, even Malcolm, Heather, like, all of us, like, I was insisting on multiple takes, and, like, my stuff, because it's Robin Williams, is just like, you fuck up Robin Williams, it's just gonna sound really. So I was
good, man.
Yeah, but I like a lot of times it was Doug coaching me, and it was like we would do like 20 takes for one line sometimes. Right. You had to go through all of that shit.
Wow.
That's what took the longest, was putting together the voice parts, not the music or the sound effects, which took a long time too because there's a lot of explosions and action movie stuff in there. But I mean, just choosing what take to use. It was like editing a film. And I've edited films before where it's like that, where you go through it. And this is an hour 40 minutes long. Yeah. So this is a lot.
Feature length.
Yeah, it was a feature length transcription. It was crazy.
I think I calculated that with the scenes we didn't do dialogue for, altogether this would be about the length of The Dark Knight.
So yeah, about
I crunched the
2:20.
numbers in my head. I was like, okay, if I treated this like a real script, here's what didn't make it. I'm like, yeah, I think like Dark Knight was like 2:30 maybe.
Was it 2:30? Okay.
Yeah, because it's longer. Batman Returns is shorter than some people think. It's only 2:10.
Right.
So I was like, yeah, this would be a 2-hour, 30-minute movie, I think.
Yeah, I mean, with the two villains, like with Two-Face being brought up in those first two movies, because your version of Batman Returns, and bring in the Riddler for like a lot of the backstory that he had. I mean, it would have to have been that long.
Yeah.
But anyway, with the voiceover stuff, when we brought in Malcolm, I mean, that was like your first thing, I think, here at Channel Awesome, was doing the demo reel episode where you're playing.
Doing a Billy D. Williams.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
The demo reel days.
Yeah.
Right. So this is going back to your roots, kind of.
To the roots.
Yeah.
Of the dreaded supervillain shuffle.
At least the nice thing this time is, unlike the Batman Returns one, there was very little Billy D overall. It was mostly at the end.
Yeah.
So you got to strut your Two-Face voice.
Yeah, like, because I was always wanting to see Billy D as Two-Face. I was like, because I lost track of the original chronology of the Batman films. I'm like, yeah, he was Harvey Dent. Why did he turn into Tommy Lee Jones?
Because once Schumacher got on board and Burton left, all of the people originally contracted were just jettisoned.
Oh, they were like out.
I mean, they kept Commissioner
He got a
Gordon
great,
Alfred.
according to Billy D, he was in an interview, he's like, I won't say how much I got for them having to break contract, but it was very nice. He was
Good on him.
Right.
Yeah.
It would have been harder to do that, I think, if Billy D. Williams was in Batman Returns. I'm sure the audience would accept it because it would have happened anyway, but
Yeah.
I think it would have been more of a backlash if he was in that second movie. But he didn't show up in there anyway, so
Yeah.
I guess that kind of worked against his version of the character, that popularity. It seemed like he got popular a little bit later on with that version. After we saw Tommy Lee Jones, it's like, what we could have had.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's like-
I think a lot of that is people were just like, oh man, I think the way the first Batman movie had that resurgence after Batman Forever and Batman and Robin in particular, people were like, yeah, it was so good. Why don't we go along that line?
Right, exactly. So Malcolm, when you're doing the Billy D voice and you're doing the Two-Face voice, I think we had it where we had you try to match like the Batman animated series version of the Two-Face voice, right? So
Yeah.
How do you get into that kind of headspace and like? Did you have to? I know this is all voiceover stuff, but I mean, you do that professionally. So like, do you get into that like mode, or do you need a minute before you get into that voice, or can you just like snap into it more often than not?
Usually I do need a minute to like warm up for it because the Two-Face voice, he's very angry and gritty. It's like a lot of constricting and the vocal cords and like forcing air through. So it was like it takes a minute to warm up to do that, like setting up your equipment to do it.
That's what it is.
But like the real challenge for me was like turning that voice into a Billy D.
Yeah.
It's like
We have nothing
That's
to
what
go
blew
off
my
of.
mind, because I thought for sure, just because we're just like, well, do your devil voice or something that sounds like Two-Face. I thought what we were going to get is Two-Face from the animated series. And not once did we have to tell you, well, can you give it that Billy D inflection? You just did it automatically. And I'm like, oh, well, we didn't need no direction here. He's got it already.
Yeah, because I know thank you, by the way. I know that, the direction was like, yeah, just use the devil voice and we'll see. I'm like, wait, no, I want to know. I want to know, like, myself what this would sound like.
Right.
And so I kind of workshopped it. And I was like, well, he'd sound a little more like this, He'd have, the Billy D isms, but that growly voice. So
Yeah.
it's just like,
It
worked
was
out,
great, man.
Yeah, you really tuned
Yeah,
in.
it was definitely, I'm like, well, we're not going to need to direct all that much.
Right.
It's like he had it from take one.
Definitely. And there's a lot of variants. I mean, there's a lot of quiet scenes that Rob wrote into this, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of like shouty scenes. So I remember like towards the end, you were kind of losing it a little bit because there's so much Two-Face
Yeah.
stuff.
The climax.
I had to grab some water.
Right.
Yeah.
There's that scene where you wrote where he's like kind of flipping back and forth between Harvey and Two-Face.
Oh, yeah.
But how we shot that or recorded it, I think we just had you do like the Billy D lines 1st and then the Two-Face lines, and I kind of just
And
blended
through the
them
magic
together.
of post.
Right.
Yeah,
Kind of blended them together.
Yeah, it works. It works seamlessly.
Right. I don't think it would have been possible to go from like talking
Yeah.
like Billy D, then talking like David, and then going back and forth in camera.
I don't think they would have done it in the movie. I think they would have done it
Probably.
in post.
Yeah, I think you're probably right.
Yeah, it's a strain.
Right.
Yeah, they would have ADR'd it, I think.
Yeah, but we've never really heard of Billy D. Two-Face. I mean, he did voice the character in the Lego movie, but it was like a background line or something.
I know, I was disappointed. I wanted so much more in that Lego movie.
Yeah.
Come on.
Did he even do the growly voice? I don't think.
I don't think so.
No, I think he just talked like,
Billy
I'm
D.
Two-Face.
I'm Two-Face now.
I'm Two-Face now.
I'm mad.
Yeah. And we can't understate how well Heather did. Man.
Oh,
She nailed
whoa.
Grace.
Yeah, like,
And that's a character that has way less backstory and way less of a history than Two-Face does.
yeah.
I was in
Oh,
shock because so and this is the
I
disadvantage.
didn't even know
like
it was Heather. Like I had to
Yeah.
remind myself. I'm like, wow, that's Heather.
so the disadvantage of with the COVID thing is we had to do things over Skype. And the
Right.
set she did for Batman Returns was just rough because we were directing over Skype, and like it was really hard to direct her when you're just
To write anybody over it was
so
difficult. Yeah.
yeah. So like that was like one concern is I'm just like, is like she gonna be up to this? And you had told me like, well, it's because we're directing over Skype. I'm like, yeah, like that's a really good point. And we brought her in and like we just explained to her that. Yeah, like we need to think because her background is theater, and like she's really good at it. But theater, it's very like emoting because you have to go to the whole audience. So we're like, yeah, no, just imagine this is a real movie and the camera's there, and like you can get quiet and intimate, and all of that. I'd say like second take on the first line, she nailed it,
Yeah.
and it was like pretty much from then on, it was just pitch perfect. I'm like,
Right.
all right, there. It's like the difference between directing.
It's a big difference. That's why we had to bring Malcolm in to do this because
Yeah.
there's so many lines. We had to.
It
Bring
made
him
all the
in.
difference, and she nailed it. Like a lot of people were complimenting her on the YouTube comments. I'm
Yeah.
like, I agreed. I was just like, oh my god, this is like so good.
Right,
Yeah,
and
so
she,
good.
She had to more create. That's what I'm saying. Is that she had to more create a character.
Yeah.
Because Grace is in a few episodes of Batman the Animated Series, and that's it. I mean, I think
Yeah.
maybe she shows up a couple times in other media somewhere, but like she's not a well-known character outside of the animated series.
And the actress we went with, Kelly McGillis, it's she was in a few movies in the '80s and early '90s, but it's not somebody that's as well known as
Right.
like Michael
Top
Keaton.
Gun.
Yeah,
and,
so I didn't even tell her. I'm like, don't even bother watching
Right.
Top Gun or anything. Like, I really want this to be more your interpretation.
Yeah.
Like, she nailed it.
She did.
Yeah, what a great character. That was,
I know it
like,
turned out really
amazing.
good. I also, I mean,
And a lot of that was on him because he had
Oh.
the Two-Face
Right.
gray stuff mostly written. I changed a few things, but not a whole lot.
Right. I always thought that was like the emotional center, and I love that from Batman the
Yeah.
Animated Series. I always considered Two-Face a character who, at the end of his story, should be redeemed. I mean, there's
I
other
agree.
other characters that don't go that way, should go darker. But I think with Two-Face, bring him back around to Harvey Dent, or like sort of helping the police from inside of Arkham or something like that. Like it's kind of where he would end up, or have
Or
a
at
tragic
least,
end.
just leave it open where he's
Right.
redeemed in the moment, but maybe you
Yeah.
see that glimmer in his evil eye or something. But
Exactly.
definitely not like just evil all the time.
Right.
Like, there's always that struggle you need with
Mm-hmm.
him.
I always question that about the character as a whole. I'm like, he's Two-Face. We should see these two dynamics, and
Yeah.
kind of struggling with that a little more.
There's a few different interpretations of Two-Face because I've seen just the straight up split personality thing where they're two separate things where Two-Face has taken over the Harvey brain and like Harvey will pop in once in a while.
Yeah.
But there's also like a blending of the two that I think the animated series kind of did after the first few episodes. It seemed like there was a hard line difference between the two at first, but then they kind of blended together afterwards.
Yeah.
But you look at something like, I guess like the Harley Quinn show we were talking about earlier. It seems like that Harvey Dent was always a jerk.
Yeah.
So there's like
It's very
differences
funny. It's not my Two-Face, but it is
Right.
amusing.
there. Right. But I always like that there is always Harvey is always in there somewhere. And 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 I love the rain scene that you added. I told you that before. That's one of my favorite scenes
God.
of the whole thing.
Yeah.
Just the fact that we have that little break. Those are always some of my favorite moments in movies is when we have the little break before sort of the third act and things like that. Did so well.
That was the only thing from what you sent me, and as I was putting it together now with the Riddler, that was the one thing I was missing. I'm like, I want that Phantom of the Opera, Dark Man kind of
Yeah.
scene where he longs after Grace, but he's too hideous.
Right.
He's too disfigured. No, I can't
No.
do it. And I use the crutch of the coin. It's like the coin lands the bad
Perfect.
setup, and it destroys his one moment to connect with her. So that crutch is ruining him.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that scene. That's my ode to like Dark Man, Phantom of the
Sure.
Opera.
It worked out. I mean, with the rain and everything, and adding it, just hearing the rain in the background with the audio and stuff, I was like, this thing came together so well. It's one of my favorite scenes in the whole thing. So great job on just putting that one together. We gotta thank Doug because I put him as a special consultant for this one, even though he didn't really voice any character. He did one line of the.
He looked through the script.
Yeah.
And he had two major contributions. One was I sent the script to him, and I said, find things to cut. And he barely touched it.
Yeah.
Like, God damn it. He's like, it's not my fault. It's too good. I wouldn't want to get. He's like, because I asked him, I'm like, well, what is your opinion? And he's like, all I can tell you, Rob, is that I sat here and thought, would I watch this movie? Would I want to see it? And I said, yeah, that's what I thought when I was writing it. Would I want to see it? And he's like, yeah, I would. And there's not much I would cut. So he found a few little things that got cut. Some I still kept. The other big thing he noted when I sent him the script was he's like, I know what you're trying to do, and it's rough because you're writing for Robin, but, you know, the big complaint about Robin, particularly in these types of stories, he's always too much of a brat, too much of a jerk. So he's like, scale back on a couple of these lines. So I did that. And then the second thing was he helped me with the voice acting.
Yeah.
Particularly the Robin Williams. He gave me some tips I never thought of, which is, according to him, he's like, Robin Williams does this thing, not on every word, but he'll add H's, kind of like Stu, you know, cool whip.
Right.
And he's like, yeah, Robin Williams will sometimes, you know, whip. Like, it's like, you got to get an H sound. The other thing he says, he's got very tight lips. So he's like, yeah, make your lips a little tight when you speak. And like, a lot of those tips, and I did all of the Williams stuff in front of him. And he'd be like, no, that's really good. That's really close. And there was somebody's like, no, do it again. Do it again. And like, there were some times we had like 8 or 9 takes.
I remember.
I know. And then Doug would be like, okay, that's the one.
Right. Yeah, Doug helped out a lot behind the scenes on this one. So even though he didn't technically voice a character or write this one, I mean, he was a good source.
There were a couple he was going to, and then when he tried it, he just like threw it up in the air and said, Rob, you do it. Because like he didn't like his Alfred, he didn't like his Gordon.
Yeah. You got all those characters, man. I mean, you really did well. I mean, you
those
spread
are the
it out.
Those are the two hardest, Gordon and Alfred.
You got them though by the end. I know that took a while. I remember listening to all the different takes.
Yeah,
but,
it's rough. Well, that was his tip with Alfred. He says you have to, because he's like, Michael Golf has those jowls. He's like, just make your face like this.
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, it worked.
Yeah. He does. So Doug voices one line from the Riddler. So if you guys want to go back into the video and try and find which line Doug voices, because it was, I won't spoil.
That's amazing.
Yeah, there's
I
a
forgot
line
which one it was
that you couldn't get. You're like, Doug, just come in here and do this, and he did it and pretty much got it, and then you moved on.
Was it like a really shouty one or something?
Yeah. So,
okay, yeah, because some of the shouty ones I could, like, it was really hard.
Right.
I could do them more like just speaking normally, like Robin Williams. The shouty ones were rough.
Right. Your conversations with Grace and everything on the rooftop, I thought you were like perfect with how he sounded. But yeah, go ahead and go into the video again and see if you could find where Doug's line is.
That's fun.
Yeah,
that's really neat.
It's a little Easter egg for you guys. Okay, I think we're going to dive into the questions. We got a lot of them. So this is across Facebook. I'll go to Twitter, and then most of the questions are on our community post that was up there from a few days ago. So we'll go to Alan Woods on Facebook. He said, first off, great job on this one of my favorites. Thanks for the hard work. On average, how long does it take for you and Rob or whoever is involved to do one of these videos? So
normally a month. This one was bizarre.
This was way longer. From beginning to end, but we also crunched it in.
Beginning was like Christmas time.
Yeah.
Post Batman Returns, and then I sent you that one that I redid was like 3 days. That was a rush job before I went on Christmas vacation to Michigan. Mm-hmm. So that was 3 days to do that, and that was just a fucking mess. I said, pick whatever you want. Right. And then I didn't hear from you again until like April, and you're like, yeah, you do it. And that's when that
Batman
process.
Was like,
no, I get it, man. It was a shock because I just thought, oh, this is never going to go anywhere. And I'm like, so then from there, 2 months?
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, probably 2.5 months.
Yeah, I did get a hold of you like ahead of time with enough time, but it was just like you had other work to do and I had other work to do, so like we had to kind of cram it in. But on average, I think like it's about 2.5 weeks from like, you know, like writing the script editing everything, doing the voiceover work and everything is usually about 2.5 weeks.
That's you. If
For a
I have
regular
an episode, I take a lot longer to write.
Yeah,
so.
to write, because you have like more time ahead of time.
I'm one of those like a-hole writers that does the whole like brainstorming sessions first
that's
and
good.
all of that.
That's,
yeah.
if I had
So
more time,
it
I
takes
would
me
do the
like
same thing.
to write one. It probably takes like 3 weeks. And I
Yeah.
send it off.
Right. So yeah, it depends on who's doing the episode. If it's me, I'm trying to make deadlines, and it'll be about from start to finish about 2.5 weeks, sometimes longer. With like the Finn episode that also Malcolm voiced a lot in, which is great.
Thank you.
That episode for like came up from behind. Now that's doing really well too. So thanks for watching. That's another longer one.
Yeah.
that
Sleeper hit.
right. That one I pushed back a little bit because I wanted to make that right, and that's a longer episode. So that took me longer to write. This next one that I got coming up took me a while. I don't want to spoil that one either, but like that's taken me a while to put together. So.
We're trying to harangue some things.
Yeah, so we'll see.
Special guest, maybe, hopefully, but
we'll see what happens. The Back to the Future 4 one took me forever to write. That took me like 3 weeks to write. That was like torture trying
to write it.
Trying to not like make it people able to poke easy holes into it. You're going to be able to anyway, like no matter what if it's a time travel story. But that one I was really trying to fill in as many as possible.
That was the Ghostbusters one I wrote.
Yeah,
that was
that.
one of that.
It's my favorite.
That took forever. And meanwhile, this one, like as I said, it was a lot of writing when we decided to go with what I handed you. But it was like from the script you handed me, that was like 3 days. It just flowed.
Right.
And I was like, why can't they all just fucking be like this?
I know what you mean. Dan Reardon, this is more not exactly a question, but he said he watched it 3 times. I want to bring this up because I've seen so many comments about people who watched this multiple times, which is
it makes me happy.
That's great. But I'm
glad you enjoyed it.
For our other videos that are way shorter, I haven't seen like repeat comments or whatever. Like, oh, I've watched this 3 or 4 times. On this one, like people have watched it. Like, I saw something like 4 or 5 times. Like, what are you doing? Okay, I mean,
it is good. Like, I find myself like kind of going back to like certain moments in the video.
Right.
Like, oh, like that exchange with Nigma and Grace on the rooftop.
Yeah,
that was truly cinematic.
That was my favorite
like
scene to write, actually.
Yeah, I could tell. I mean, it was really well. It was well put together, and just like got a lot of the backstory with Riddler out there without like explaining everything. It was good stuff.
That was my biggest thing about Riddler was versus Two-Face. I actually didn't want him to have 1,001 explanations and a whole origin story.
Right.
I very much just want him like, no, he just wants to prove himself the smartest man in the room, and he wants to take on Batman, and it's just. It's very simple. There's not a whole lot of mystery to him.
Right.
Versus Two-Face, who I think is much more complex in certain ways.
Sure. This is from Kyle here. He said, great episode, loved it. One question I have is, if you put the restriction of having to keep Jim Carrey casting as the Riddler instead of Robin Williams, would you have changed anything to fit his style of acting or try to keep more grounded in the drama similar to his other works? If you would do changes, what would they be?
I would make him more... I would go less 1 hour photo or Insomnia, which was my inspiration for Robin Williams, and I would probably go more like a dark Stanley Ipkiss.
Yeah, I can see that.
Stanley Ipkiss, I thought, is probably one of his better roles, which he says he channeled his father a lot, which would work because there's a lot of daddy issues in this. Something like that. I would not go anywhere near something like Cable Guy or like I would do the exact. I wouldn't make him super creepy. I would actually make him probably a little more likable. And then when he puts on the suit, something almost takes over a little more. Versus Robin Williams, so I think could do the creep factor a little more even out of the suit. But I think in both cases they're both more animated in the suit.
Yeah,
like it frees them in the same way Batman's different in the suit and Two-Face is different when he's Big Bad Harvey.
Bad Harv. Oh yeah. This is from Josh on Facebook. Did either of you guys have any ideas on how to add Scarecrow, or was it just too crowded at that point? Also, will Scarecrow show up in the Batman and Robin episode? I feel like he would be amazing for this universe, and he could prey on the fears of Bruce becoming older and Dick learning to take the mantle of Gotham's Knight.
It was way too crowded.
Yeah,
I would imagine. Right?
I know. I didn't realize. I was not up on the rumor mill that apparently Brad Dourif was up for Scarecrow.
Right.
I didn't realize that when I cast him just as that CEO in the beginning.
Yeah.
I mean, we couldn't do it in this. If for some reason we threw him in Batman and Robin, I couldn't use Brad Dourif now because I just had him.
Right. I love
I'm kicking myself a little for that because I didn't realize. But
it's all right. I mean, it was a nice ode to kind of that rumor,
Yeah.
I guess, even though it wasn't playing the same character. But I would say that, I mean, I personally love the Scarecrow. I think he's a really underappreciated Batman villain, and he's never gotten his own Batman movie. You could do so much with the visuals. Think of, like,
Because
Spider-Man
he's not the
Homecoming.
primary villain in Begins.
Right. No, he's not. I mean,
That's
he's
Ra's
just,
al Ghul. So.
right. He's still interesting in that. I do like Cillian Murphy a lot, but
Oh, I thought he was great.
yeah,
but
I think he's a
it's-
really good Scarecrow. But I think of that scene in Spider-Man where Mysterio kind of like creates this
I love
crazy,
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
psychedelic world that Peter is going through. Just think of that, but with Scarecrow and Batman and all these different characters.
I like Batman Begins. I was a little underwhelmed with the Scarecrow's whole toxin. Just where's everything about this? I'm like, man, you could have done anything, and that's it.
Right.
Polanski, I mean, not Polanski, Nolan, he likes to be realistic.
Yeah, for
so
sure, and
it's
that's a great thing. I think more often than not. But
There's
also
pros
holds you
and
back.
there's pros and cons. Same with
Right.
Burton. So
In terms of him being in our Batman and Robin video, wasn't what we have planned yet. But I mean, if I were to do a Scarecrow Batman movie, I would want him to be the main villain. You know, and there's,
yeah, I agree.
I think we're still.
Well, you know
toying
what?
around
We just
we're
won't
gonna
stop at Batman and Robin. We'll do Batman 5 with Michael Keaton. We're gonna get all the way to where we're just Batman Beyond with
do.
Michael Keaton.
Hey, why not? Okay, we're shifting over to Twitter now. The God of Myth is asking this question. Will we see Two-Face and/or Catwoman back for the what if Tim Burton directed Batman and Robin? Granted, that one has even more characters in it with Bane and Ivy and Freeze.
Well, Catwoman, yes. according
Catwoman
to you.
for sure.
That's the whole reason Catwoman was even in this one.
Right. That was
a great setup.
I will say that was like that. I had that in my original script, but it wasn't like to the point that Rob had her actually come back. I was gonna have a claw, like Batman finds a claw on like a detective outing,
Which would have worked, like, because we had this discussion. I said it would have worked great if this were a Nolan movie,
Yeah,
because
right.
it reminded me of like, oh, the calling card with the Joker. But the way Burton's films end, I'm like, nah, the second we do that reveal, like with the bat signal on again, it's like we can't cut to Batman finding a claw. Like you just have to have him on top of the building. triumphant.
It would break the.
So
it would break the momentum. At the
It
end.
felt more natural to put it right after that talk
Sure.
with Grace. But yeah, what was the other one?
Catwoman for sure. Two-Face.
I have no plans.
Right,
I don't know about you, because this one's probably going to be a little more your baby, because you had more ideas for it.
Yeah, I mean, my ideas are very out there. So, like, I'm not sure. Like, I'm still forming that. So, I mean, that's not going to happen until next year. I know a lot of people are asking when that's coming out, so we'll just answer.
You're going to have to wait a while.
It's going to be next year. I'm not sure when next year yet. Maybe Batman, maybe, attached to the Batman movie coming out, or, maybe we'll see what happens. But, I don't know about Two-Face yet. I mean, like, it would be cool to maybe use him in a small cameo, kind of, but there's a lot going on already.
Yeah, there's a lot.
So I don't know. We've been getting this one a lot, by the way. From Deep Dive Disney. He on Twitter, he says, "Do you consider this canon with the What If Harley Quinn was in Tim Burton's Batman episode?"
No.
Oh, no.
You don't
that
consider
was
this
a one-off. That was a one-off. That
Right.
has nothing to do with this.
Right.
We to me, there's Tim Burton's '89 Batman, untouched,
Yeah.
and then there's the Batman Returns, which we retouched,
Yeah.
and then this one.
Right. I will say I am going to be doing I think the next Fanscription episode, if everything comes together correctly, is going to be what if Harley Quinn was in The Dark Knight, because that was another request that we got from before. And the Batman '89 movie, we did a poll and it just barely beat it out. So I'm going to try and insert her into The Dark Knight, and we'll see how that works out. Ooh. Yeah. Two Faces. Okay, I've seen this a couple times from Noah Harris. Was including Chase Meridian ever discussed? For me, no.
No.
That's it.
Just once we decided to go with Grace, the only thing I did was I beefed up Grace and Bruce having a past relationship. So there is like a very minor kind of romantic sexual tension there of like a former fling. But no, that whole Chase Meridian thing, like we couldn't add a Chase Meridian character, and I was very adamant that is not who Grace was, which is why I didn't cast. Some people are like, oh, Rene Russo was really attached. I'm like, too sultry. I'm like, I wanted somebody that, because like Grace is supposed to be kind of like the more innocence, and we've had like Vicky Vale's somewhere in between. I mean, Kim Basinger, obviously has a sexual energy to her, but then we just had Michelle Pfeiffer, and that's just over the top with Catwoman. So I'm like, let's go against type a little with this one, and then if you want to do something like that, Batman and Robin.
Right. Matthew Kearns asks, at any point in the script scripting / reworking phase, did you have Catwoman having a more prominent role, or was it always that quick scene? Well, I already said that's the quick scene.
Yeah,
Did you
it
ever
was a
think
quick
of-
scene. No.
No.
I tried, the only thought I had, and I couldn't figure out how to work it, because I was trying to think of a way to bring her in at the end, was that Batman nearly falls off the cliff saving Two-Face, and then she saves him, pops up out of nowhere. And she was watching this unfold the whole time. But I thought it should really be on Grace and Two-Face and Batman and Robin and that whole dynamic. I'm like, don't add a fifth thing in there. There's like too much going on. So.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you. This is from Ewan the Shadow Master. For Rob, were there any other quotes from the original film, like "I'll get drive-through"? You had in earlier drafts for the video, but later cut. I get drive-through was mine.
That was his. I did that. I showed Doug the script, and Doug like put the red through it, like cut. And
No!
I'm like, no.
Come on.
I'm like, that's Walter's. Like, oh, that makes sense. I was like, really, Rob? You put that in there? I'm like, no.
No.
I'm like, and it seems important to Walter. I'll keep it.
I thought it was just like a funny way to like tie in. just a little Easter
Yeah,
egg.
no. Most of the ones that I had in there that were repurposed were the ones I wanted. I think the only one I didn't have was I didn't have Robin Williams, and I was debating it was and now the real game begins, like something like that, like from Batman Forever. But I think all of the lines, yeah, like that I had wanted from Batman Forever that I could work in there were in there.
Yeah, there's a few. There's a handful of them.
Yeah.
So I thought they worked though. I mean, they worked in the reworked area.
Yeah, they were just
this-
repurposed. And
Right.
like,
And they didn't come off as goofy, so or at least most of the time. And he also says for Walter, what was your personal favorite edit you made for the video, like the shots of Robin Williams as Edward Nygma? So that was all Rob making those pictures. In terms of like the edit that I made, I mean, it's more about the audio for me with this one because I was cutting together a movie, like I said earlier. I was cutting together and overlaying a lot of dialogue.
and the audio was instrumental.
Right. I think maybe my favorite edit was when they were talking about Edward and Grace on the rooftop the second time, and then there's that explosion that happens in the background. Now I had like a nuclear bomb go off.
That was the one I had, like maybe like when you showed me that
we
rough
screened
draft
it earlier. Yeah.
the dailies, as we call
Yeah.
it, like the rough cut, like there were like 3 or 4 minor criticisms, but the biggest one was like, what the fuck? That was the only thing where I'm like,
I cut to the explosion from Dark Knight Rises with the nuclear thing because we needed and I told you before we watched that, I was
Yeah.
like, this is like all I had time for, so like there's gonna be some blunders in here, so I did warn you ahead of time.
that was my favorite. Just it's supposed to be like, I was thinking like a little shop exploding, and
Yeah,
it's an
but-
ocean.
Needed
It's
so-
daytime, and it's a
Right.
nuclear explosion.
Yeah,
Like, what?
because what I was thinking was that we see the explosion in the background, but there's nothing like that really, so that's why I was like, that's kind of in the background, but like that's just what I ended up
I
putting on it.
agree. Like I would have preferred that, but it's like we could just cut to like a shop exploding. But yeah, I thought the same thing, that you would just see like a little tiny explosion.
Right, but
like,
there's nothing
yeah.
footage we could draw from
No,
that we
it's
could
true.
find in time.
Yeah,
but
that's
how
like,
the
like
sorry.
yeah, I just kind of like shrugged. I was like, okay, I was like
right
intense.
intense, yeah. But yeah, I think that one was my favorite for the audio because like there's this really intense scene. How you wrote it was great, and then in the background you hear that explosion, and we cut
Yeah,
to the
and then he's like, "Oh,
from
gotta
Batman
go."
Returns, yeah. So that was one of my favorites. There's a lot of the things that came together really well with. Oh man, the first motorcycle chase scene from the graveyard and everything. That was hell to put together, but it came together really well.
It did. I was very impressed because
Yeah.
as I was like writing it, I'm just like, oh man, I've made his life hell. I don't know how he's gonna do this.
It worked. It just took me a really long time. This is a very interesting question from Sean B on Twitter. If Burton did indeed sign on to do Batman Forever, do you think Superman Lives would have moved forward or still die in development hell? And if it did move forward, who do you think would have directed it?
Oh,
Interesting question.
I don't think it would. I don't think it would have been Burton. The weird thing about Burton is I think he liked doing Batman enough, but I don't think he's that into superheroes overall. The way he talks about doing the movies, he needs something to like really grab him, and I'm not sure what in Superman grabs him or even says Tim Burton movie. If he didn't, I don't know who would have done it, but I don't think it would have been him one way or the other.
I don't think that project would have ever gotten off the ground if he didn't.
That's kind of what I'm thinking.
I mean, there was like conversations early on with the Kevin Smith script and stuff, but like I don't think that really would have gone as far as it did without Tim Burton being involved. So.
Yeah.
What was Superman Lives supposed to be about?
So that was the Nicolas Cage Superman.
Yeah, apparently it's gonna have
yeah.
Nicolas Cage.
Was there a plot?
There was, yeah, they were like, they had sets built. They were like 3 weeks away from shooting when it got canceled.
Wow.
So like he wasted over a year of work on it. And that was what he did.
I don't know if you watched Mad TV back in the day, but they had this amazing sketch combining that with was it Leaving Las Vegas or whatever, and it had him as a drunk Superman. It was called Leaving Metropolis, and it had Nicolas Cage as Superman flying upside down, completely drunk, holding a bottle.
Perfect. I mean, like, he was really emotionally attached to that Superman project, though, so he might have still tried to do it. I just don't know.
Let's do it, Gary.
Right. Right. But I don't know. Like, it would have probably died earlier than it did without him doing the Batman movies.
I mean,
It was a weird time for superhero movies, the late 90s, mid to
Yeah.
late 90s.
What villain were they going with for Lives?
Brainiac.
Brainiac, yeah.
You know what? I could see Burton doing something with Brainiac.
Brainiac could be a great.
Maybe, yeah. I don't know. But there's few sci-fi, like, I think of Planet of the Apes, and I'm just like, yeah, no.
Oh, it was kind of,
Yeah, I don't know. I don't see Burton being into it enough, or Superman does not scream Burton to me. Just doesn't.
No,
So-
I mean, like, that's why they changed the character to be like this outsider thing. Like, I mean, whenever they interview Nicolas Cage about it, he's like, oh man, me and Tim Burton were going to turn this character upside down. I had no idea. So it was going to be a very different version, but it would have been fun to have seen how crazy they would have made it. So.
It probably would have been pretty batshit, ironically, for a Superman film.
I mean, I think it probably would have been hated when it first came out, and then later everyone would have loved it because of how zany it would have been.
Oh, the Batman Returns syndrome.
Kinda, yeah. Okay, this is from I don't know, Brown.
Kieju?
Yeah.
Kieju.
Sorry, I'm sorry for the name pronunciation.
Kid
Kieju?
Yeah. Again, love this installment. My question is, what led you to go as dark as you did with Riddler? Most enigmas range from mirthful to menacing, but this one was just twisted. Was it Robin Williams' darker roles like 1 Hour Photo and Insomnia, or was there another influence in the mix?
Oh, I can.
Those two definitely were high up in the mix. It was just... It seemed to make the most sense for a Burton movie. I wanted, like... Because if you look at... Like, Penguin has funny lines, but Penguin's also pretty freaking dark.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, I'm like, yeah, I think that's just the direction Burton would go, but I wanted to make it a little more down to earth, because you got Two-Face, he's horribly disfigured, he's got goons. I wanted Riddler to be more like a Mad Bomber type. And I'm like, closeted nerd, wants to prove himself.
Right.
And then we've got the Funhouse kind of idea.
I love
Mirror
that.
Maze.
I love that. And yeah, how that was all put together. Like the images you did.
But yeah, Death to Smoochie was also. I used Death to Smoochie.
Yeah.
It was like shaving the head, and which was I read, because I did read up on some of what they were going to do. One of the concepts was that Riddler would have a shaved head with a question mark in the middle.
Right.
So that's why I did that near the end, like when he goes completely nuts,
right,
and just transforms.
I think that, like, I remember when I read your version of the Riddler, I was thinking, that's exactly what I would have done with not exactly with the Funhouse maze and stuff. I'm making him kind of like a Saw character, like like trapping people and doing these kind of.
That's what I thought. Like Saw with kind of definitely like certainly the opening with the dude strapped to the chair is like Saw based.
Oh yeah.
And the idea is, I just thought, well, he's all about his intellect, proving himself smarter, so he devises traps and devious sort of ways to. So to me, that was all about showing off his intellect, and also just having control and trying to find out who Batman is. Like that was the first thing I wanted him to do, was just establish. I want to know who Batman is. This is my reason for existing.
Right. Yeah, I thought that was a well-established motivation for
Which
him.
is something Batman Forever did at the halfway point. And I like that. I'm like, well, why start off at the halfway point to get Two-Face on board? Have him do that originally, and then he sees Two-Face as somebody who can help him out with that.
Right. I think that, I mean, if I were to have written Riddler into this originally, it would have been like the same tone. So, like, we were on the exact same page with that. This is from the Maniacal JC on Twitter. Absolutely love this episode. Waited till I was off work and able to chill with a few beers while watching. That's nice.
Nice.
Not just saying this is a version of Batman I will consider lore now. Oh, thank you.
Awesome.
My question is, and we could throw this to Malcolm, my question is, how much practice and rehearsal went into the voice acting? We talked about it a little bit, but
Yeah, I talked about it a little bit earlier. Basically, it was an effort of combining that animated Batman Two-Face voice with Billy D, and just kind of workshopping it. But after that, it was just kind of like just the direction, like being able to sit down and like discuss the motivations and the emotions that the characters are going through. I do take time to workshop most of my characters, but this one, it was fun. It was fun kind of playing around with it. It's like, an evil Billy D.
Right.
It's like...
'Cause we haven't really seen too much of that kind of thing. I mean, like...
No.
He never
I think he could
plays-
really do it.
I mean, he could easily play like a slimy kind of character, but he doesn't... I mean, Lando was... You could argue that he kind of was that, but in the end, he was a good
sleazy,
guy. So
He's had a lot of roles like that, like
Yeah.
pre-Star Wars. But
Nighthawks.
yeah, but no, I think he would have been amazing trying something like that.
Yeah,
With a lot of depth.
it would have been great to have seen. He also says you guys nailed the voices, and again, Robin Williams Riddler is a thing to me now. Haha. Also, what editing? He said, haha. I wasn't sarcastically laughing at him. Also, what editing software was used for the image editing? Because that looked great too and added lots. Awesome job. Hope to see Fanscription keep going. Stay cool and stay safe.
Photoshop, Creative
Yeah.
Cloud, like
Yeah.
latest version of Photoshop. That's what I had.
There you go. And then I just dropped it on the timer.
Bam.
Okay, this one was an interesting one that Rob and I were discussing earlier. Ian Smith on Twitter says, who were some of your other casting choices for Robin? Seriously loved the Mike Vitar idea. Great choice. And would you have put as a villain, who would you put as a villain if you didn't go with the Riddler based on comic lore at the time, or who you thought would have been an interesting choice?
Well, okay, so villain-wise, Scarecrow is probably who I would have gone with.
Okay.
I could have maybe I could have found a way to tie the fear thing with Two-Face
Yeah.
and like, because we did the same thing with Riddler. There's kind of this funhouse aspect of like,
Yeah.
so, but Mike Vitar, that was your idea, and we had nobody else, and I wish we did, because that dude's only in like 3 or 4 movies, and it was such a pain in the ass to find images. I had to go like teen magazines. I'm like a 14-year-old girl, like old Mike Vitar pictures, little hearts around him, like just desperately searching for any image, because he's younger in The Sandlot, but I did grab a couple from
Yeah.
there, but he's always got the baseball cap on. I'm like,
Right.
so many Mighty Ducks 2 and 3 is where I got most of them from, and I used so many of them. I'm like, I gotta find other images.
Right.
They're all the same thing.
The Vitar casting was my idea. I was always thinking of him from like D3, where he was like around 17 years old, because that's about the age that we had him in this episode.
He would have been based on when the movie came out. It would have been between Mighty Ducks 2 and 3.
Right. I think he could have nailed it, because he does.
Yeah.
He does have that like dark side, and you see it come out once in a while in like random moments in the Mighty Ducks movies and in the Sandlot, where he totally could have pulled it off. He was like
He
pretty
gets
built
that
guy.
look, like, what?
Right.
Like, yeah, I could see it.
He's got like the stature of a Robin too, because he's not super tall, but he's like was a well-built kid, and like he could have totally done well as.
He's
Robin.
both well built, but kind of slight. Like
Right.
you could see him like next to Batman as like a smaller version. Like,
Yeah.
Right. Very live.
No, because I was so desperate to find somebody else to cast so I could get easier images. There was nobody. Because Jonathan, like, I was thinking of all the boys at the time. I'm like, man, it was the 90s. Who was hot? I'm like, Jonathan Taylor Thomas? Like, really?
Yeah.
We're going to go with that? Like, so many of them fell into that category. Who they wanted to cast originally was Marlon Wayans, but the thing
Right.
is, I think he could have done it based on what I see now, but the problem is he would have been too old. I'm like, if we were casting for a younger Robin, Chris O'Donnell to me was already too old. Like, to me, it's just,
24 when they shot
yeah,
it.
it's like, it's kind of hilarious, because I'm like, why don't you just leave? You're a grown-ass adult. You don't like it there at Wayne Manor. So, yeah, trying to find somebody that would have looked age-appropriate, like, had to be between 15 and 17 or 15 and 18.
And so
I couldn't think of anybody.
he didn't have much around D3, like.
He really didn't do anything.
He dropped
after
off
that.
the face
Yeah.
of the planet. He had one
did he just, like,
small
leave?
film that
He
I
was
had
a
never heard of
paramedic,
and
I
couldn't
think.
find clips
Wow.
from. Yeah.
Yeah, he did like he was mostly just a kid teenage actor.
Yeah.
He didn't really do anything after that. So I mean, like I love him from The Sandlot, and like when I was looking
Yeah, I do
through
too.
those like actors around
Benny
that
the
age,
Jet Rodriguez.
absolutely.
Yeah.
When I saw like him pop up there, I was like, oh yeah, This can totally work. This can
when
totally work.
when I grabbed like a couple images and put them in next to Michael Keaton, I'm like, fuck, this really does work, and now I'm gonna be stuck with it, probably for a Batman and
for
Robin
the next
one,
one, I mean, we might just rely on more artist imagery with them in
Yeah,
this next
I
one.
hope
'cause
so.
We don't have any more footage of him to draw from.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, like, I couldn't really think of anyone else. Like, I did look through some other, like, actors at the time, and I just couldn't think of
Yeah.
someone else who could
And I
have
wanted
matched
somebody. I wanted a different dynamic of like I want somebody younger, not like who's the 12-year-old?
it. Oh, Damien.
Damien,
Oh,
yeah,
the
not
Damien
that-
version of Batman.
Yeah, not that young, but I'm like I want somebody that would be a legit teenager to start. So
This is moving over to YouTube now. This is from SMB Superfan. Number 1, what was the biggest inspiration for the villains, Robin's, Riddler, and Billy's Two-Face, respectively, and the dynamic they had / characterization they got? We'll go with that one first. So they did have a relationship in this movie, kind of like they did in the original Batman Forever.
Yeah.
So you tied them all together, and you did it in a unique way. So what was the thing behind that?
well, Robin Williams Riddler, like Insomnia, 1 Hour Photo, Billy D's Two-Face, more just like the animated series, classic like Darkman, Phantom of the Opera type thing. Their relationship is devil. How do I put it? Devil and angel. Where so Two-Face gets redeemed, and I viewed it. It's actually a trio. So basically, Two-Face has Grace on the one shoulder, that's the angel, and Riddler on the other shoulder, that's the devil. And Two-Face is somewhere in between, and the Riddler is pure nihilism. He has moments where he almost comes out of it, but then he feels betrayed by Grace. But he's pure nihilistic. He's got his own daddy issues, and I like the scene where he talks about like. Because I had this like sins of the father thing kind of running through it, and I love the scene where he's like, I'll show you the true religion. You got to overcome your issues, and yet at the very end you realize that he never did. He's full of shit.
He's literally
and he goes
caught
out
in
in
it.
full. He goes out. He's the darkness. He's what happens if Two-Face's dark side completely takes over. It's just pure nihilism. He goes out in a blaze of glory, and that's almost what Two-Face does at the end. So he's the other image of what happens, and then you've got Grace, who kind of pulls the good side out of Two-Face. And then you've got Bruce, who is also the product of his father, but it's a much different scenario. He's the product of a father who cared about him, who, tried to raise him to be a good person, and when he lost his father, that created Bruce into this kind of moral crusader. I mean, the Burton
Depending
Batman
on the
is
version.
darker.
Yeah.
But then what I did is I tied that together with Robin, because now Bruce has to try to raise this kid and basically soften himself a little. One thing I wanted to do is like Batman doesn't really kill in this one, as far as I remember.
It was kind of him being pulled back from that. Though,
It was
'cause you kind of
there's
mentioned-
a moment where he's ready. He like
he says,
because
"I
when he
should
thinks
kill
he
you."
sent
Yeah.
Two-Face to kill Grace, he's very much like the first. He was like, "I'm gonna kill you,"
Yeah.
And Robin's the one who's like, "Bruce," like after all of this, and
Right.
like he.
That
So
gives him another reason to be there too, is to kind of humanize Bruce a little bit more from that super dark version that was in the first.
well,
two
and
movies.
that was the point with the conversation that he has with Alfred, which is he's like, yeah, well, your father wasn't always perfect. It's implied that maybe he was much more of a playboy and this and that having a son is what softened him, even though he had no idea what he was doing. And Alfred's like, well, your father said the same thing. It's like kids change you in the same way you can change kids. So I wanted that whole thing tied together with pretty much all the characters, more or less, with all of these angels and demons on their shoulders kind of struggling.
Really good beats in there.
Yeah, it kind of the nature versus nurture thing too. I picked up on in there with Bruce had Alfred,
And Alfred's another surrogate father figure
Right,
who
exactly.
tries to get him to adopt Robin. Like
right.
it goes in circles. That was one criticism somebody had. It was like, what do you have against fathers? It's like fathers. I'm like, nothing. I'm like,
against fathers.
What's wrong
well,
with
no, I was trying to say no. This is the difference between good fathers and bad fathers. I mean, Bruce, Alfred, and Robin, they're all the products of good parents.
Yeah.
And they've lost good parents, in the process. And meanwhile, like Two-Face and Riddler are the products of bad parents, but Two-Face gets redeemed because he gets help. Like
Right.
it doesn't mean you will be bad.
Right. It's just thematics. It's just themes.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right here.
He also asks, this is kind of a quick one, I guess, but what is the thought process for how you do your rewrites? I think we bounce each other, you know, like
Yeah, we bounced.
look
I
for
showed it
notes
to
sometimes.
Doug.
Yeah.
Doug had me soften Robin a bit. There was like one line I think we changed at the
Yeah, that was the
we had
last
one that
thing
was
we
like,
changed.
yeah, what the hell was it? It was something like
It's like, hey, just put out a sign that says orphanage. At least I'll be picked up by
somebody,
Damn.
by a parent who gives a crap,
Yeah.
and like Doug's like, yeah, that line sucks. I'm like, we kept trying to think of something else. I
Right.
forget what we went with.
We
but-
did change it. Like I think I rewrote something,
Yeah.
and then you like changed it a little bit, and that's what we used. But yeah, I mean, you will never see it in the video now because we changed it at the very last second. This is from The Destructive Gamer, My Comic Adventures. It's a good name. First off, love the video is amazing, and two, if you were to make another 1 hour fanscription that's not Batman and Robin, what film would you do? What's like a big project? Indiana Jones, are we talking about doing that?
Yeah, I mean, Indiana Jones, we were talking about doing that. I've done some of the bigger ones, like my version of Return of the Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
Different Ghostbusters 2, I did that. Those are a lot of the big ones. I just don't know if I want to put the effort into it. But Terminator Salvation is one where I'm like, man, there's a good idea in there somewhere. Like, this is probably not the worst of the Terminator movies post 2. Like, this is actually probably one of the better ones. But I'm like, man, if you just did this different and this, and so that might be one. I don't have a lot in my head. I'm like, yeah, full 1 hour. Like, for some reason in my head canon, this was the big one. And now that I've done it, I almost don't know what to do next.
Right. I mean, well, Batman and Robin's definitely going to be along this same vein.
Yeah.
We're planning on doing the Indiana Jones ones next year, and that's going to be like our version of the fourth movie, not Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. that's another one that's been on the list since the beginning of the show.
Maybe a Star Trek movie, like Into Darkness.
That would be cool. Yeah, that's for a long time.
I would actually like to try to tackle Star Trek V, which
Yeah.
is one that I think has a lot of great ideas, and then it just, implodes.
Right. Yeah. I've not seen a lot of the Star Trek stuff. That's kind of one of the blank spots in my fandom.
We got to do a movie night.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of Next Generation.
Uncle Rob will
That's about
hook
it.
you up.
Aw.
Thanks, Uncle Rob.
What about like Avatar? Like, you think it's possible to make
Oh, you mean the Last Airbender?
Last
I don't
Airbender?
think it's possible.
You don't think so?
I think that the length of that show, the only way to do it would be like a miniseries on like HBO or something. I think it was hubris to attempt to even do one season as one movie.
Oh yeah.
I thought it was a mistake. Maybe if you did it as 2 per season, so you had a 6-movie series, like maybe the Potter series, but
Yeah.
I don't know. It's still a pretty tall order.
It
Yeah.
is. It's a lot.
That's where I always like, I never really considered fanscription fixing the movies as much as like just giving an alternate take on something. So like with Avatar or something, if there's an idea that you thought could have gone left where they went right, opposite way that I just did, then you could.
Which is funny because
just
I'm
do
much
that.
more about fixing the movies.
Right.
That's-
but that's where I think this one did really
Yeah.
well, is that we were kind of doing both in this.
yeah, no, it really worked out.
Yeah. This is from Alex Carson, good friend to the show and stuff. This is a totally random question, haha, but with your version of Batman Forever, including the Riddler and Two-Face as the key antagonists, and with this era of Batman being released around the same time as Batman the Animated Series, that being 1995, are there any antagonists from the TV series that you might want to see working into your fanscription version of this film, or even would have been great inclusions on screen at the time, just in general? She says Mad Hatter as an example.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it in this one, but ones I would have liked to have seen in the movies. Well, we said Scarecrow,
Scarecrow.
Mad Hatter, Clayface.
Clayface would have been awesome.
I would say I really like. I have a soft spot for Clock King. My only problem with Clock King is he's too Riddler-esque for me.
Yeah, that's true.
It's a lot of his stuff. Just I feel like this is just like Diet Riddler. But I do like Clock King. Yeah, Mad Hatter would be a big one, and that would be much more up Burton's.
I was about to
Oh,
say the same
yeah.
thing. I'm like, he would nail that. I always think that, like, along with Scarecrow, Mad Hatter is a even more underrated villain. Like, no one ever talks about him.
Yeah.
Like, he pops up once in a
You
while.
know what would be fascinating is do Johnny Depp as the Mad Hatter,
Oh, yeah.
and kind of just similar to what they did, and
Yeah.
he's just fucking bonkers.
Right.
Like you're dealing with a
Oh.
true maniac who's just out of his mind, like not even grounded in reality. But
That could have worked. Yeah, it's a shame that we'll never see something like
Yeah.
that. But I know they have done live action versions of the Mad Hatter on like the Gotham show, and I think it was in one of the video games. But a true Mad Hatter interpretation in a movie, I think, would be great. So eventually, maybe they'll get there. But he just kind of seemed to be on the bottom, or like mid-tier villain for Batman.
Yeah.
This is something I've seen a lot. This was from Daniel Tatham on YouTube. I think I remember Patrick Stewart being a potential choice for Mr. Freeze and Robin in Batman and Robin. Is this something you will consider in the future?
Should we bring this up that this is our point of disagreement? Because I want Patrick Stewart as Mr. Freeze, and you want to keep Schwarzenegger.
I was thinking that this is a big point of contention.
You want the challenge, I think, of trying to make Schwarzenegger serious.
He could do it. Like we've seen it. Yeah. We've seen him in movies, Maggie, like this, like some of his later movies, even in like glimpses of his more dramatic chops that we saw when he was like in the 90s.
I think of Patrick Stewart in Next Generation, Best of Both Worlds, is that Borg, version of himself, and how I'm like, man, I could totally see that.
Yeah, I mean, we're still talking about it, so I don't know yet, but
we'll see who wins the fist fight.
Yeah, right. He's just not like, I don't think Mr. Freeze when I think of Patrick Stewart. Like, I know that's a big fan cast thing, but like, I just like I don't see it working. I don't know.
I'm just saying when we come out with it and all the replies is like, why'd you go with Patrick Stewart? I'll be like, hey man, that was this asshole.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big fan cast, so we'll think about it. I don't know.
It could go either way. Like, I could see it.
I will say the challenge of doing Schwarzenegger does have slight appeal to me. Like, how do you make that work?
Also, I mean, that'd be a big challenge just doing the voiceover stuff. Because, I mean, like, you can't do that voice without doing a parody. So that would be tough to pull off. I would have to have him, like, just do voiceover narration for all his lines. Because you can't really have someone, like, talking like this, I'm Mr. Freeze. And, like,
you just get a jar and be like, this is a beard boy. Beard boy. My name is Freeze. Remember it well.
Take two. Carmen the one.
That's my favorite line from that whole movie. I'm seeing a lot. I mean, a ton of asking about Batman and Robin. We are doing Batman and Robin. It's going to be next year. Just don't know when yet. Okay? It's happening. There's a lot of really long...
Yeah, that's a whopper right
now. So I can't read all of this right now. Sorry. What made you not include Brad Dourif as Scarecrow? That would have been awesome. We talked about it a little bit.
Yeah, it's just there were too many villains already. I was not aware of that casting choice that was going to happen. So that's my fault. I had read up a lot on Batman Forever. Somehow I missed that tidbit. And when I found out after the fact, I'm like, shit, I probably wouldn't have had Brad Dourif in there in the beginning because I would have maybe thought maybe we could save that for another one, but. Yeah, so that's on me. That was just a mistake.
I mean, still.
We couldn't have done it in this. Like, we had
There's
two
much.
already.
I mean, it would have to be like a tease, and even that would have been
I wouldn't have killed a Brad Dourif character off in this one had I known.
Right. I mean, you cast him as the Ferris Boyle character from the animated series, who's kind of the catalyst for the Mr. Freeze character. So, I mean, we might tie that in later. But
I mean, that could have been a mistake. I don't know. I was like, some of this was we were so late in the game and I was pressed for time. So I'm like, I was just trying to find a name like CEOs of Gotham. And I had not seen like the animated series in a long time.
Yeah.
So that name just came up. I'm like, boom, done. Like, wasn't thinking about it too hard. And maybe I should have slowed down for a second. But as I said, we were so rushed.
We could still have another character fill that same role. I mean, we were talking about bringing the Chip character back.
Well, that was you, because I asked you about that, because I said... I did find out late in the game, I'm like, oh, this character was responsible for Freeze. I'm like, are you using this character in Batman and Robin? And you told me no. So I'm like, okay, well then we can kill him off.
My idea for it is kind of Chip possibly filling that role. The Chip, what's his last name?
Bring back Chip Shrek.
Chip Shrek. What a great name. Dad, I'm doing an impression of you.
Chip Shrek.
The layers.
His name sounds like a Chipmunks movie. Chip Shrek.
Chip Shrek. I saw this a couple times. So we are doing Batman and Robin, but Samuel Williams is asking, are we going to do Batman Unchained? So there's Batman Unchained and there's Batman Triumphant, which were unproduced scripts for a continuation of Batman and Robin. So kind of the continuation of the Burtonverse.
I mean, if we want to continue...
If people love the Batman and Robin one and they really want to keep it going, then we'll...
I would like to see Scarecrow. I would have to not go with Brad Dourif.
Right.
Or just bring him back and just like, they were two separate characters. Or maybe they were related. Right. I had a twin brother. But
it's like the Goblins.
I would like to do that. Mad Hatter, like maybe some of the others that we couldn't get to yet in a Burtonverse.
So we'll see. As like a fifth Burton movie, maybe. Because there are like a couple... There's Batman Unchained, there's Batman Triumphant, and... I think there are other ideas that weren't even put into scripts that they were talking about doing before the Nolan reboot and stuff. So, yeah, I mean, when we'll cross that bridge when it comes to it. That wouldn't be at the earliest, like 2023. So,
Goodness.
yeah. But next year, like we said, we are hoping to get that Batman and Robin one out there. What were the biggest? This is from Ninja Blue Fire. What were the biggest references for Robin Williams' version of the Riddler, both story and performance-wise? Amazing impression, by the way. So we talked about Insomnia. And,
and Insomnia, 1 hour photo, a little bit of Death to Smoochie. I'm trying to think. I know it sounds weird, a little bit of when he was a little more normal and understated. I had little moments from Mrs. Doubtfire in my head when he was like trying to find a job early on. He's like, what do I do then? Ship him. And he's like, and like it just very that laid back kind of version of him. Maybe even a little bit from Hook. Because I was trying moments where he has a little bit more humanity. I was thinking of things like that. Story-wise, I mean, it's very he's a flip side of Two-Face, and they're both Phantom of the Opera. Mm-hmm. They both in Two-Face's he's disfigured physically. In Riddler's case, I think it's like almost self-imposed, where it's like he's kind of a nerd, he's kind of a shut-in, and he's fawning over this woman who treats him nicely and stuff, and it's like I just think that Phantom of the Opera undercurrent is with both of them, where it's both that syndrome of pining over somebody, but it's not working out. In this case, Riddler thinks it's Bruce, but the reality is it's still Two-Face.
Right.
I don't know. Yeah, I really don't know what inspired them being in the same building. I was trying to tie the two stories together in a way, and I just had some moment where I thought, he exits an elevator and there's Grace, and I just had
That's a great moment.
I had this moment where I just thought, man, if I were in a theater, I'd be like, and I just thought I could hear a whole audience going,
that's the gasp moment.
Yeah, and Doug said he when he read the script, he was like, that's actually what I did. I was like, oh shit.
Yeah, that legitimately happened to me while I was watching. I'm like,
I don't know what inspired it. Maybe there's something in my subconscious. I can't say that. Oh yeah, everything come up with this original. I don't know what it is. So maybe if somebody's like, oh, it reminds me of this, and if I read it, I'll be like, that's what it was. But right. I can't think of it. But that's just something I thought that would be so cool.
Yeah, those subconscious.
And it just ties them together like that.
Right. You can almost compare it to the Spider-Man Homecoming reveal with Michael Keaton and stuff, right? But that was kind of
that's it. Sorry. I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to bang that. I was thinking, there's got to be something. That's it.
That was a big moment.
That was it.
Put a bass drop
it was the Spider. No, you nailed it. It was the Spider-Man thing. I remember thinking, oh, what a great moment that was, and how everybody was just like, oh shit, and I remember thinking I got to tie these stories together. I was like, well, what if they meet in the same building? I was like, oh, it'd be that scene where everybody's just super tense. It's a Hitchcockian thing too, where it's
sure.
Hitchcock always said true suspense is you as an audience member, something effective you as an audience member know that there's a bomb under the table, but nobody else in the movie does.
Right.
And so you're sitting there and it's the same thing where it's these two characters don't know, but you know, and so you're on eggshells the whole time.
Right.
It's shit.
Yeah.
No, you nailed it. Thank you. Because I was thinking, there's got to be something. I felt like there was an influence.
That was the last time I remember everyone going holy shit.
Yeah.
That was a big
No, that's totally it. I think that was definitely an influence.
Right.
Dramatic tension.
Mm-hmm. This is from TechCraft on YouTube. How did you decide on running Two-Face's character? Did you base it on other roles Billy D. Williams did? So this will be a Malcolm question.
Oh.
And comics/movies, or was it pure thought and ideas from Robin Walter? Besides the writing that we did for that character, here it is.
Oh, where's the question? Okay, there it is.
Did you watch Empire Strikes Back or something? Because this isn't the first time you've done that voice.
Yeah. I do go back to those moments in the original Batman films with Billy D. Williams.
He's great in that first movie too.
And then
we're working on it.
Yeah, and then
need all the help we can get.
Yeah. Yeah, I just love his mannerisms, and then in Empire Strikes Back when he's just kind of cunning and sly talking like that. You get a little bit of it, and it's oh, there it is. There's the cunning.
Yeah,
he's a smooth politician in Batman, which is what I like. And he said he he had the character mapped out in his head, I guess, according to interviews, and also based on kind of what we know about Two-Face. It was like, yeah, his father was a preacher, and he wants to do good in the city, and he's like, but he's kind of a playboy, and he's like, he's always got a cigar in his mouth. Mm-hmm. And I was like, yeah, no, I loved his version of Harvey.
Yeah, it's a smooth talking like Two-Face that just is, you know, mad. Mm-hmm. It's like a pissed off pimp.
Well, I tried to.
He does have the voice for something like that.
When I gave him, like, when I filled out his backstory bit from what Riddler found out, like, I'm like, you can see how this guy happened, because his father's a preacher and everything, and he's got that gambling side to him that he inherited from his dad, who gambled away all the church funds, but he wanted to do good, and then of course, like, the city basically bites back,
right?
And he feels betrayed. But yeah, I think it all ties together. I thought your impression was great.
Thank you. Thank you.
You did really well, man.
Thank you.
This is from Dr. Chaos with a K. Even though this fan description is very well done and believable, the one thing I find off about it is Grace. She comes off as somewhat ignorant of Harvey's actions. I want to bring this up because we talked about this in the scripting stage. And the suffering he has inflicted upon others. Specifically, Robin and the families of those he had killed or were killed through his cooperation with Riddler. Is this thread going to be explored further in the fanscription of Batman and Robin?
Okay, well, I'll say this. This is the trouble doing this versus writing a whole movie script. There were certain things that I wanted to dwell on a little more, but it's just like we were an hour 40 with the read-through. There were a couple more scenes I would have written. I would have liked Bruce to bring it up a little more.
Right.
And I think her argument is generally... I think she genuinely believes that this is not Harvey.
Right.
That this is an insanity, like that he is insane and needs help. But we were so pressed for time. I'm like, man, I can't. I couldn't add more dialogue.
Right.
We were so over as it was at an hour 40. But that's something that, like in a retread, there's a couple dialogue scenes I would have liked to punch up Robin a little more with Bruce and their interaction instead of just narrating. But that's just what happens, like when we've got a time limit.
Right. I mean. Overall, I don't have any regrets about this one. We did the best we could, like, with it. So, I mean...
there's tiny things, like, they're not regrets, but just...
Right, I mean...
If we had the time, I would have done it. Like,
a few more months, but, I mean...
Because I tried to cover everything as best as I could, where I'm like, no, this makes sense, but... Yeah, that was one thing where I'm like, she comes off as, like, a little Pollyanna-ish.
Right.
And I wanted to, like...
I remember you
give her a
it
little more nuance, but...
That's how I wrote her from the first draft, and you were asking me if, like... So what's her deal with, like, why is she just... passing off Harvey's dark turn. I was kind of like she's kind of like delusional about what's happening here. This is the love of her life, and she can't accept.
And
that
you gave Heather that direction that your character is delusional, because Heather was asking too. It's like you're delusional, and it was something that as I was sitting there was like, if I had the time, we could have like parsed that out a little more in dialogue. But
and it came through for me in the subtext. Just the through
Well, the thing
lines.
is, she's the angel on Harvey's shoulder. Her name is literally Grace. We kept that from the animated series. So I'm like, if you make her just like, oh no, you're crazy, Harvey, and well, he's killed people, I can't trust him, like. Because that's what Bruce is. So I'm like, well, she needs to be the opposite of Bruce. Like, there's this dichotomy in all the characters. Like, all the characters are split on different sides. And I'm like, well, if we have her just like Bruce, then that just didn't work. I wanted everybody to be, like, opposite sides of a coin.
Right. Yeah. I like how she turned out, and, like, the rewrites that you did with her dialogue and stuff, I think really worked. But her being the anchor to pull Harvey back, I think, is kind of what's missing from a lot of the interpretations of Two-Face. Because we talk about, earlier when I mentioned...
Including somewhere, I think was it The Long Halloween? Was that the one where it was his wife?
Oh, like, I can't remember.
It was like one of them, like, it's been a while since I've read that series, but yeah. It's like she's in on it.
I mean, you have Rachel Dawes in Dark Knight and stuff, but I never liked that character. So, like, there's... Grace was so integral into the... Like, getting inside of the head of Harvey in the animated series. Like, her being the anchor to pull him back when he goes too far is an important part of the character that I just don't see show up too much. So, I mean, she has to believe in his good side for that to work, you know?
Yeah, true.
It's very metaphorical. This is like a spiritual battle.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly. So it's... Yeah, I wouldn't take it too seriously.
Yeah. This next one is from Ace Deller. Why did you use the Red Robin suit instead of the classic Robin suit? So you asked me about this when we were in the middle of doing it, and I kind of just sent you a Red Robin suit.
You gave me two options, and I liked the Red Robin suit. But here's what I liked about it. And the thing is, I would like if we had time, I would have had done a full redesign to make it look like a Burton Universe suit. Mm-hmm. But of all the options you had sent me, I liked the crimson red wings of it.
Yeah.
Because I thought, well, like Burton's whole bat suit was very much supposed to be intimidating and terrifying, and I'm like, as I said, I would have tried to find an artist way to like make it look cooler, but I'm like, I feel like that literal crimson wing kind of look would fit in the Burton universe. I'm like, yeah, if I saw this like these like red wings heading towards me, like and his face is kind of in the shadows, like I probably would have gone like a hood to keep his face in the shadows and then red. But it would have been darker looking. We were just stuck using the comic version.
Right.
Now you said Hood. Was that like a reference to the Red Hood? Who becomes Red Hood?
That's Jason Todd.
Okay,
So it wouldn't be Dick Grayson. Yeah. Also, the hood for Robin a lot of the times is used by mostly Damian Wayne. Kind of brought that in, like the younger Robin.
Yeah. I would have used the hood though as a way to like, because the one thing I don't like is the Robin mask.
Yeah,
it never looks right to me.
Yeah,
so I was trying to think of ways. I'm like, okay, what would be a cool looking suit that you could hide his face to give the blackness, just like you have with Michael Keaton's Batman, but also have that, because that's something Burton's very into. He likes that animal nature. Catwoman's costume, the Penguin being a literal kind of penguin man, Batman dressing up in that bat suit. So at once it was like, yeah, it looks like a literal bird. And then in my perfect world, we would have had time and I would have redesigned it to make it look darker like a Burton film. But I would have wanted those dark kind of red wings, like maybe not feathers, but like kind of like almost like pokey ends, like almost like little swords or something. Something that would like kind of look scary.
Right. Sorry, go ahead, Michael.
I was gonna say that I feel like that red design like works as a reference to Red Hood, because since Dick Grayson was kind of like struggling with taking that leap into becoming like a vengeful.
Right.
Yeah, I mean it could.
There is kind of you could draw that conclusion.
The other thing was I wanted something.
Sure.
I wanted something that I could see somebody who was in the circus wearing, but also did not look like a straight up goofy circus costume.
Right. I mean, of the ones that when I was looking up to send you, the Red Robin one stuck out to me too, because that's not the first Red Robin suit. There's I think I sent you the other one with the full hood, but there's no ears. Like there's a full cowl, which could have maybe worked, but.
I just there was something about the cowl I didn't like. I'm like,
that
looks. I think a hood actually works better.
Sure.
For Robin, but that's just me.
Yeah, like a beak.
Like it looked too much like a little mini Batman. I'm like, no, I don't want a mini Batman look with a full hood and like little ears. But yeah, that one was rough. I would have loved to have like had somebody do a design for us, but we just didn't have the time.
Right.
And it was like short pressed as it was. So
yeah. But I mean, I think that Red Robin costume, the one that we used, if it modified a little bit, could fit with the armor and the wings you're talking about. Like it could fit into the Batman.
I mean, my goal was like the one thing I hate about Robin is I hate green. It's like a Robin costume just shouldn't have green to me. I'm like, it's not really terrifying. It's too goofy looking. It's like Christmas colors.
Right.
So I like the idea of red, gold, and black.
Sure.
I thought because gold and black are Batman, and then the red gives you the accent.
Right.
And I thought that's what I would go with if I were Tim Burton. I'm like, design me something that looks more badass but goes off this.
I saw a couple of people asking about like the short sleeve and stuff. Like, no, like this is like armor for.
Yeah, it's armor.
Yeah, and in the '89 universe, like you would need something like that. I mean, it's not you can't go out there with a short sleeve shirt on. I mean, it'll work in the animated series, but not in like the Burton movies. This is kind of funny from Maviri Cat. Not a question, but a request. Would Rob be so kind as to do a number of bad pickup lines while doing his Robin Williams impression?
Oh my God.
That would have been...
I'm trying to think of any bad pickup lines I know.
I'm sure that scene with Nigma trying to work up the courage to talk to Grace would be a hoot.
Hey, baby, you want to play house? You be the screen door and I'll slam you all night.
Oh my God.
Like, like a list of them. That would be a terrible one.
I'd have to. I wish I had a list in front of me. That's the only one that came to me off the top of my head.
Oh, that's great.
Just like, all right, that was it Psych? Hey, baby, did you hear about what happened to Pluto? That's messed up.
yeah.
Wow.
From Psych, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we should have had like some alternate takes or something we could have put at the end.
I did. I think there was one alternate take where he, like, there was like one or two, but it just ended with there once was a girl from Nantucket. No, that's terrible.
Okay, this is from Jeff Jones. He's talking about Tim Drake, but it's Dick Grayson that I think he's meaning. I'm curious about your opinion that Marlon Wayans was rumored to play Tim Drake in Tim Burton's version of Batman Forever. He would have been the mechanic for Batman, and also your thoughts on Tim Drake being cast as an African-American in the Titans TV series.
Oh, he was? I haven't been following it.
Yeah, I haven't been following it too much. I don't have a problem with him being
So we discussed Marlon Wayans.
Right.
And
I don't think he was going to be Tim Drake, though.
No, I don't think he was going to be. He was just going to be like some offshoot
kid
of
or
Robin.
something. Yeah, he wasn't going to be
So the only reason I didn't go with him is because I had a problem with Chris O'Donnell being too old.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, well, I can't do Marlon Wayans then. I do think now that enough time has passed, I'm like, I could see Marlon Wayans doing it depending on how you did it. I would like it a little more serious. If we get Marlon Wayans from like frickin' Dungeons and Dragons movie or something, I'm like, no.
Scary movie?
Yeah, scary movie Marlon. No, but if they really like, the Wayans were pretty talented. Like, you know, most people that came out of In Living Color were. So, like Jamie, if you had told me Jamie Foxx would be an Academy Award winner, like after seeing season 1 of In Living Color, I'd been like, what? But it's like that was a real proving ground for a lot of people, and a lot of them like do amazing work. So I could see it. It's just I couldn't see it with what we wanted to do because I was very adamant that I wanted an age-appropriate, like, teenage Batman, not what I think they were trying to say he was like a mechanic or something, and like he would have been older. So that's not me. I couldn't give two shits what if you're African American, white, Asian, what it, like if it's a good character and it's written well, it's a good character, and it depends how it's acted. So if you want to switch that up,
I mean, it is kind of also there's not a lot
that's
of
never
variance.
a problem with me. But.
There's not a lot of variance in the Robins. Dick Grayson is a kid with dark hair. Jason Todd is a kid with dark hair. Tim Drake is a kid with dark hair.
Yeah.
Damian Wayne is a kid with dark hair. I mean, like, breaking it up is not that bad of a thing. They all look exactly the same. No one's even blonde or anything. They did have a female Robin, Stephanie Brown, who was also like the spoiler character, but they never use her in anything else.
My philosophy is always the same. Character first. If you've got a great character, you're like, I have a great idea. It's a female Robin, and this is her story, and blah, 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 and it's a really good story. Good.
Right.
What I don't like is, we just need a female Robin. Someone else make that happen. And like, I'm like, no, come up with a good character, and then if it works that way, like, great. Too many times they come up with the idea first without fleshing out a good... Well, like, Fantastic Four is a great example with casting Michael B. Jordan. But they did nothing with them. I'm like, they're great actors, and there's just nothing. So it's like, you have to have a good character first.
Yeah, like if the ethnicity doesn't factor into the character's story, then they can be anything, you know?
For sure.
Unless it's like specifically written in there that they're this, that, and,
right.
You know.
So, I mean, I know, like, people are like up in arms about the Superman thing. That's a whole nother discussion. But I mean, yeah, I usually don't have a problem with that unless it's like there's the difference between that and like
this alien from another planet must be
white. But I mean, like, when there is sometimes where it's obvious they're like. You know, like, we're trying to connect to a new audience. It's like, okay.
That's what I hate. It's this is the difference. If somebody has a great character and says, yeah, I want to make them female, and I want to tie into the story, and like this informs who they are, and like she's got depth and this and that. Mm-hmm. That's fine. I hate it when chart guys come in and go like, we just need to appeal to the female, demographic, so make it happen. It's like, well, what do you want? I don't know, girl, right? Girl, super, and it's like, and you can tell that there's just no thought put behind it. Besides that, I don't like that.
Right.
That does nobody any good.
This is an interesting question. I'm just going to rephrase from Spider-Boy N2 Jesus or Jesus. I don't know. He's asking about the Catwoman movie that was made with Halle Berry. But if they had a Bruce Wayne in there in place of the detective, would that have worked maybe? Or maybe with the Michelle Pfeiffer Catwoman movie, do you think that it could have gone on? Do you think that it could have made something in the Tim Burton universe with Batman?
I mean, yeah, you could have. I wouldn't have put a Bruce Wayne in the Halle Berry movie because that has nothing to do with anything.
Yeah, that was weird.
But Yeah, no, I think it could have happened. Michelle Pfeiffer was on board. And judging by what Michael Keaton generally says about his love of the first two movies, like, he would have been on board, so
Yeah.
you could have done something. And they had great chemistry. Like,
They did. Oh, yeah.
But they sell that movie, so.
Yeah.
This one is from Abdullah bin Fadilia. Sorry.
Fadilia.
Tim Burton famously has a hatred for Robin, despite the studio forcing him to cast an actor for a possible third movie. If the Marlon Wayans Robin was brought to life, do you think he would have done a good job?
Interesting.
I don't know.
It's hard to say.
I don't know. I think it depends on how you would write Robin. I tried to write Robin in a way that I could connect it with Bruce and Michael Keaton's interpretation of Bruce.
Mm-hmm.
So, and also keep it kind of dark. I was trying to think, I'm like, would Tim Burton approve of this? And I tried to write something like, no, you could explore these characters and what they mean to so. But I don't know. Who the hell can read Tim Burton's mind?
I mean, like Tim
Helena
Burton,
Bonham Carter, maybe?
maybe.
Maybe.
But, like he hated the Robin character. This news is.
I mean, I don't know if he hated him, but he did not want to use a Robin character. He wanted to keep the Batman character.
They were
like,
desperate
a solo
all the way back in
vigilante.
Returns. They wanted Robin even in Returns.
Well, they want him in '89. They wanted.
They want him in
They
'89 as well.
storyboarded that whole sequence.
Yeah, and he was, and I get why, because Robin up until that point, like, just think that for most people who don't read the comics, you just had the Adam West show to go off of. They're like, some weird goofy boy sidekick, his ward. What's this? Like, golly gee willikers, Batman.
Yeah. Do I think he would have worked? I think that if Tim Burton had the idea to bring him in as this alternate kind of version of Robin, where he was like this mechanic who would fix the Batmobile and then got involved with Bruce Wayne's crusade, like, I think it could have worked. So, and it's not like Marlon Wayans is a bad actor. He could have worked. And he's also
He could have done it.
He's still getting paid for Batman Returns and Batman Forever. He gets residual checks from those movies.
Oh yeah, and Billy D. Williams.
Yeah, so, hey man, I mean, I'm not feeling sorry.
And I think
for
Rene Russo, like, everybody was attached to that.
Yeah, they all still get cut checks in the mail as residuals from movies they weren't in. It's so weird.
Wow.
This is from WJ Zav. Which was the easiest and hardest part to write?
Ooh.
This is more for you.
Honestly, most of the Robin Williams stuff was the easiest. I don't know why. I just had an image in my head of what I wanted, and I did it. The hardest stuff, probably the Bruce, a lot of the Bruce Robin stuff, and even some of the dialogue you had with Bruce and Grace.
Yeah,
I tweaked a bit just to make it more something what I would want to kind of fit with the new tone. But yeah, I'd say Bruce and Robin. I was trying to find ways to not make that lame.
Yeah.
You know, so a lot of people, they automatically hate Robin. So I'm like, yeah, I want to like give this kid some personality and like show you why he would be upset.
right.
Because Bruce opens up to him, and then it looks from his point of view that Bruce just disappears. I think that the one where he's pissed and he says like, I used to look up to that guy, the Batman. And even to this day, I'm not in love with that scene, but there were a couple lines I like.
I love the Photoshop.
Mall karate.
Yeah, Mall Karate is
Yeah.
Karate
Okay,
was
I know a
perfect.
few moves. Like that one was probably the hardest, right? Because I'm like, how much comes off as lame and how much comes off as like, it's kind of legit, a little funny, like
Yeah.
Bruce schooling him, putting him in
It's
his
so
face.
90s. That's so 90s.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It felt very mid '90s in there.
Yeah.
I just love the line, the like white belt. Psst, it's a black belt.
Yeah. That was great. It's
belt,
like, so he's
sure,
kind of capable. He knows. It's
Yeah, I think it was a cool way to incorporate that he could take care of himself.
That was one scene that got dropped that I wanted to put in there, was something that showed off his kind of like skills.
I mean, mentioning it though was smart. I mean, like
So
we did
mentioning
have-
it that he had the black, I did want one that showed off his gymnastics, right? I was gonna do it, and I
Well,
was
he's
like,
he's a trapeze
yeah,
artist.
I was gonna have like
He's
Alfred
that.
just like saying like, lunch, sir, and he's like, not interested, doing the kind of
Did you
teenage
want
thing.
him
It's
to
like,
like dry clothes with his toes?
no, what I wanted him to do was like Alfred's like, well, then I guess I'll just throw this like it's like some amazing pizza out,
Yeah.
and he like just like freaking like does a backflip over the
Right.
like, and Alfred's just like, oh, okay, like got some skills. Like parkour's his way maybe down from a tree or something, and
Like
Right,
slides
but-
down the rail in the manor. Like,
yeah,
Yeah.
something
They
that
do,
would be
do
cute.
that in the original movies.
Yeah, I wanted something like that, but I'm just like, we're good.
This is from Rogue Brit Gravy 1. Great name. Having done these for the Batman franchise, are you going to do the same for the Christopher Reeve Superman movies? I have not had any ideas to touch those Christopher Reeve Superman movies.
There's nothing really to touch just because Superman 1 and 2 works as a complete set, and
Yeah.
just 3 and 4 didn't happen.
You could do like, what if Richard Donner directed Superman 3 and have Brainiac in there like it was supposed to be instead of that weird robot thing?
We could try that.
That's the only thing I could think of.
I love Richard Pryor, but man, I don't know if I would cast Richard Pryor in it either.
No, I would not.
Oh yeah.
I was like, with the greatest comedians of,
Yeah.
all time, but I'm just like, he just is not fitting here. Like,
Yeah, that was.
they didn't know what to do with him.
Yeah.
Right. The third, I mean, a lot of people talk about how bad the fourth movie is, which, sure. But the third one's bad, too.
The fourth is like bad special effects and stuff, but the third one, the plot is just bonkers.
Yeah. But yeah, that robot, it's a creepy scene when that woman gets like... the
Doug said
circuitry in her
that scene
face.
terrified him as a kid.
It's a scary scene for little kids, man.
yeah.
It's a robot, like a computer, like taking over a woman's like brain, and like it is pretty
Being,
scary,
yeah.
yeah. And you could see where a Brainiac was in, like that would obviously
yeah.
be a Brainiac thing.
Oh man.
But having Richard Donner direct a third movie in the same vein as the first two, and bringing in a villain like Brainiac, I think that could have worked. So,
yeah, I mean, maybe.
like
We could
retooling
discuss
it. Yeah, but it's never jumped out to me because I think those movies are perfect, and I don't even want to do an alternate version of them. I just think that
Yeah, no, we wouldn't touch 1 and 2.
right, they're great. Let's see. A lot of people keep asking. I mean, I understand. A lot of people want to see a Batman and Robin one. We are doing it, and it will be a continuation of Batman Forever. It's not going to be like a standalone thing or anything like that. Can you make it an audiobook? This is from Mr. Tuber. I mean, like, we do have... I know we promote these YouTube videos, but these are all out on our podcast feed. That's on Apple Podcasts. They're on a lot of different apps that you could find just the audio version, so you can play them while you're driving your car or whatever.
I wonder someday if I just had a bunch of extra time on my hand, like, write out the whole script.
Yeah.
Keep like the descriptions in an audiobook format, but all the scenes we couldn't throw in there. Some of the dialogue scenes we just had to breeze through. I'd be curious to maybe try that someday, but definitely not for a while. I'm spent.
Right. We're still spent.
Yeah.
This is from Clownboy03. If Tommy Lee Jones took the role seriously as Two-Face, if he played him like Aaron Eckhart did, do you think he would have been a good Two-Face?
He
under a
could
different
have.
director.
I mean, he is a great actor. It would have been different. It would have been a little more. I think it would have been a little more slimy. Probably a little more like what we got currently going on in like Harley.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be like Aaron Eckhart, who because Tommy Lee Jones, he has an interesting looking face. I wouldn't call it classically handsome in the same way Aaron Eckhart is.
Sure.
So I think it would have been a different interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe as like a sly lawyer kind of type. I don't know. Maybe a little more gangstery.
I think he could totally have.
Because
pulled
Aaron
off the
Eckhart, there was
Harvey
nothing
Dent side,
gangstery about him. Even when he became Two-Face, like, I didn't get gangster
No,
out of it. It was just Aaron
like
Eckhart
pure
now is
revenge.
evil.
Yeah, right. I do think he gets overshadowed a lot in The Dark Knight, by the way. Like, a lot of people love, of course, talking about Heath Ledger's Joker, which is amazing, but a lot of people don't talk about Aaron Eckhart's Two-Face and Harvey Dent, which I think was a really, really good performance.
It was. I completely agree.
Yeah, so I wish I would see him in more stuff, though, too, because he's not in a lot of big movies anymore.
Oh no!
I Frankenstein kind of killed it for him.
Oh wait, what's I Frankenstein?
Exactly.
Oh no!
Thank you for smoking. I think it was before Dark Knight. So
Yeah.
I can't even count that.
Dang. Because I was like,
That's
man,
what made me
he's-
realize he would probably be a good Harvey Dent, because I'm like, oh man, he got the slick part down there.
Okay, this is from Word Life CW. Your Burtonverse universe has been my most watched videos on here. LOL. Gotta ask, and obviously, if you can't answer, I get it, but with the way Rob mentioned in the Harley Quinn podcast how a Harley Catwoman team up would have been interesting for Batman Returns, and the fact that both characters are still alive and well in your universe, could we be seeing a Burtonverse Batman and Robin featuring the Gotham Sirens, including Poison Ivy? So we mentioned before that the Harley Quinn fanscription is not in
Yeah,
like,
that's the
continuity
issue.
with these two.
I mean, if we did that, it would be a different continuity.
Mhm.
I suppose we go with the Harley continuity.
Right.
But yeah,
I guess it doesn't directly
That's up to
contradict
you.
anything, does it?
not really.
So I guess we could, but I don't consider that a part of. Like we mentioned earlier, it's the '89 Batman movie untouched, and then Rob's version of Batman Returns, and then this one. So yeah, I would not put her in there at this point. So I did want to talk about this really quick. So this is from DF. I really liked it a lot and thought it was well crafted, although I felt like this was missing more Batman scenes, particularly of action. Maybe I'm accustomed to studio template garbage where there's a minimum 3 Batman fight sequences or scenes. This project was cerebral and thought out, however, was more of a Bruce Wayne than a Batman film in my opinion. Not hating, still really liked it. We did talk about...
That was by design.
Yeah, we did talk about that there wasn't a lot of Batman stuff in the first draft of this.
That was my only... I added Batman stuff, I think, compared to yours.
Yeah, you did.
Yours, because you came up with the idea that Batman had basically given up.
Yeah.
Had quit.
Well, I mean, kind of forced into
retirement. And you...
I had him fighting the cops and stuff. I had him,
yeah, you had him like the cops were after him.
Right.
So I added the scene like when he first shows up again, fighting the Riddler's, like Two-Face and Riddler's men, and then the montage was. So I added a bunch of things to like, and then when we added the Riddler, we had the fight in the mirror maze.
Yeah.
Which starts off as Bruce but becomes Batman. For me, that was kind of intentional, that the underlying theme of this one is Bruce Wayne going to continue being Batman, which is something Batman Forever did, only they had him be Batman throughout most of that, and then he decides halfway through the movie, no, I'm giving it up, and I'm like, what? So this one, I decided to just do the opposite. I'm like, he starts off like the way you did it, where he's not Batman, and then it becomes this question throughout the whole movie. So, I mean, that was intentional. Whether or not people would have responded to that, I don't know.
People always say, "Where's the character that in the mask and all that stuff?" I mean, personally, I think we saw 2 of them. We saw 2 full movies where he's Batman quite a bit, and the third one, like where you left part 2. I mean, he wouldn't be able to just go out anymore. He wasn't exonerated yet, so I thought him kind of collapsing in on himself with like, "Where's Harvey?" He doesn't know where Harvey is. He doesn't know where Catwoman is. And he can't even go out.
Yeah, this to me was
was
more Bruce Wayne's cerebral journey.
Yeah, right.
So that to me was like, it was done by design. It was intentional, and that even though it's not as action packed, you would write that off if you saw like 4 movies or even 3 movies that are like, oh, this is the one where he's got to make that decision.
Yeah.
So it didn't bother me. But I could hear people as I was like writing the script. I was like, oh, I could hear the criticism.
Where's Batman?
Yeah, I could hear the criticism in 1995. I was like, oh man, this Batman, this one was Batman Returns. I mean, he didn't even show up in Batman Returns till 20 minutes in. Oh my god! Like, so I don't know. I
thought it was kind of brilliant. Like, I felt there was enough action sequence in there.
There was definitely enough. I mean, from how you wrote it, I know I had less Batman.
I love that circus fight too. That was brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, the thing is, there's a lot. If you really look at the script, there's a lot of action. It's just not he's just not in the suit.
Right.
He's got the circus fight where he fights there. He's got the first half of the mirror maze. He fights there. He's captured by Riddler, and that's a tense scene. I would say the scene where he's Bruce and talking to Nigma and Grace there in the hallway when Nigma figures it out is super tense.
Yeah, for sure.
I just think it's just he's not in the suit, and I think that's what sets. But I kind of wanted that. Like, that's what sets this movie apart. Is that this is the big question? Like, you know, who is Bruce Wayne? Who is Batman? You know, and trying.
I think Keaton would have liked that too.
That's what Keaton said, that he did like that, and the one thing that he made clear that, and I followed this as best I could, was I was reading interviews, and something Keaton said is that's important to his character of Batman is Batman doesn't talk. He said when he got the Batman Returns script, there were a bunch of Batman lines, and Keaton was just crossing them out left and right. And it's like, no, it's like that's Batman's secret. And once I came to that conclusion, I'm like, really, then you need to dump a lot of this on Bruce Wayne. Because you can't have Batman delivering all these lines of dialogue. And you had him rip the mask off at the end, and I thought it was brilliant. Because that opened him up. that opened him up to like really try to talk Harvey down without
Right.
having to have the mask on. It's always gotta sound like this, you know.
I thought that moment was
Because
incredible.
Well, thanks, Mel.
Yeah, for sure.
Thanks for reacting to it with their voice. Yeah, I always thought, I mean, like, that would be the thing. Like, Harvey already knows. I mean, there's no point for him to keep the mask on at that point, right? So
Yeah.
And also, it's kind of it works against Harvey, too, because he sees the face of his friend, so or it works against Two-Face, I should say. Because it will pull Harvey back out a little bit.
But it's a very Bruce, and I get that, and if it's a criticism, I'm like... It's a fair criticism. It says you either like it or you don't. If you don't like it, I get it. I mean, some people just want to see Batman kick a bunch of ass in the suit, but
It's so iconic.
to me it was this was a Bruce heavy plot.
Right.
That the Bruce side of it won out more over just Batman in the suit.
Right.
And that was by design. So if you don't like it, I get it. But
Right. I mean, in mine, I think it would have been longer. Like
no, the Batman didn't come into like way into it. And I
was
just
like
remember thinking,
middle-
I've got to bring him in earlier.
Right. No, I totally get that. I think what I was trying to aim for was when Robin stole the suit, or when Dick Grayson stole the old Batman suit, like, Batman would go out to bring him back in and save him from Two-Face and stuff, and that would be the big first time you see him. But it was a little too far into the script to, like, legitimize it being a Batman movie, maybe. So,
I mean, like, honestly, like, if we were looking at it as like a treatment, like, if once it goes to, like, you know, through some more hands, they're like, okay, we'll just, you know, add in some more action sequences.
Right.
You know.
Well, that's why I thought the circus scene... The circus scene, I think, fixed that. Where it's like, okay, the circus scene is an action scene.
yeah.
So, and the thing is, I wanted when Bruce put the suit back on, that's your big moment. You get your Danny Elf music, oh, like, I want him to step out, and you have that, like, the Batmobile peeling out, so that the Riddler is basically what calls him to action, like, draws him out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess, like, him being in and out of suit is kind of important to this kind of character study of Bruce Wayne. So it's like whenever he's in suit, it has a purpose, and whenever he's out of suit.
Yeah. It's not just gratuitous Batman shots in this one. There's a reason for when he puts it on.
Got it.
Okay.
Okay.
Last question by Mike Adams. Is it safe to say we can blame McDonald's for this?
I'll get drive-through. They're called Happy Meals, not Sad Meals, Tim.
What's that black stuff coming out of the Penguin's mouth?
It's always my favorite interview with Tim Burton, where it's just like, yeah, we were thinking going in like a different direction, and halfway through the conversation, it's like, I get it. You don't want me
to
back.
make
Well,
it.
we didn't say that. It's like, I'll tell you what, just do what you want. I get it.
He was going to do more, which for a director like Tim Burton, who's like in that point in his career was thriving off doing original things, like Ed Wood, and I think he made Ed Wood like right after leaving this project.
The 90s for me is the Burton at his height was the 90s.
Right, and Beetlejuice and Edward Scissorhands. I mean, like he was coming out with a Big Fish was a little bit later. We wouldn't have got some of those movies, but the fact that he was willing to sacrifice some of that to keep going with Batman, I'm kind of surprised that he would have kept going. You know, like he was so willing to.
I think if he got something that interested him, and I don't know if something like this would have interested him, or if it may have been too cerebral for him, where he's just like, you know, I want a little more like, you know.
He was talking about ideas that he was coming up with for it. So I mean, like in the interview clip I posted in the original video, it's much longer, where it's like a featurette on Batman Returns or whatever, where he's like talking. It's a few years later too, where he talks about like ideas he was coming up with. So I think he had the ideas, but I mean, like just the mere fact that he would have been willing to keep going.
You scared the little kiddies. That drove me nuts, because I'm like, Doug and I was 13 when that movie came out. Doug was 11. We loved Batman Returns.
Yeah.
And like I remember seeing like there was like a couple talk shows that I've seen where they were just like, and what did you think about it? Little Timmy was like, I wrote a review for my school newspaper, and it was over violent, and it scared children. What? And I'm just like, what narc kid is this? I'm like, you're gonna get your ass beat at school. What is this? I'm like, you're a plant. Some adult paid you to do this. I don't believe this.
Right?
I was like,
I wrote a review, and it's awful.
It's too violent. I'm like, oh my god.
Almost as bad as Return to Oz.
It was hilarious. I'm a grown 41-year-old adult. I'm just yelling at my computer screen, Narc! You ruined it for all of us.
You lie. Yeah, that's all the questions that weren't repeats and stuff. So thanks, guys. Really appreciate.
Thanks for watching.
This is a lot.
Thanks for the conversation. I've read most of the comments. I think
There's a lot of comments.
I stopped originally somewhere around 1800. I think we're up to 2100.
Is that where we're at? Oh my goodness. I haven't
checked it earlier
the video
today.
in a while. Let's see.
At 1800 is where I stopped.
2,162 comments. That's a lot of comments.
And that was weeks afterwards I stopped. So
Prince Vegeta.
Prince
liked
Vegeta
it.
commented.
nice.
Yes.
I don't even know. That's great.
He's a funny content creator. He does like things as Vegeta.
Oh,
Like, he
cool.
does
That's awesome.
satire and parody.
Oh, well, thanks, Prince Vegeta. He's
Yeah.
got a check mark next to him, so he's the real Prince of all Saiyans.
This was a wonderfully made video. Amazing actors involved. Loved it very much. Definitely subbing to this gem of a channel.
Wow.
Yeah, he's also a
All
voice
right.
actor.
Great. Okay.
Fantastic.
Cool. Hey, thanks, Prince Vegeta. Don't kill me. All right.
Big Bang.
All right, that's where we're gonna stop, guys. This was almost a 2-hour long podcast because there's a lot to discuss. We gave you a lot of background on our ideas for all this and answered a lot of your questions. So thank you so much for watching. Come back for some other videos. We have a bunch of other fanscriptions. Go watch those too. Go check out the Monsters Inc. one that just came out.
Oh yeah,
we got a Monsters Inc. We got another Batman one we did way back when with Harley. What if Harley Quinn was in the first one?
Yeah.
And I tried to write that like it was still a Tim Burton.
Right.
Like they had Boss. She was working for Boss Grissom, and it was fun.
Yeah, it was a good one. We have the What If Finn was the main character in the Star Wars sequel trilogy, which Malcolm voiced Finn for, which is great.
My version of Ghostbusters 2016.
Yeah.
My version of Ghostbusters 2.
Right.
I'm that jerk who didn't even like the sequel that much.
That's one of my favorite ones
Well,
we've done is the
2016.
Ghostbusters 2 one. The Back to the Future Part 4 one was a big project that I
What
worked
if
on.
What if
so
Luke died in Return of the Jedi? That was a fun one.
There's a whole bunch of them. So go check those
lot.
out. If you just want to listen to the audio versions of it, you can on the same podcast feed you're listening to this now. And if you're watching the video version, there should be a link in the description for all that stuff. But thank you guys so much for watching. We'll be back with a new fanscription very soon. Malcolm, thanks for joining us, man.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
It's good working with you.
Thank you.
All right. We'll talk to you later. Bye, everybody.
I'm Batman.
We're back.
We're Batman. We're Batman.